Well, didn't see that one coming. Oklahoma and Brent Venables have agreed to a new 6-year contract that'll pay Venables, on average, $10.5 million per year. That according to ESPN's Pete Thamel. New Oklahoma athletics director Roger Denny released a statement praising Venables, saying that Oklahoma's head coach has a unique ability to connect with young men and bring out the best in them, and that Venables is elite at building culture. Denny added this quote, "What I hope this extension says to our players is that in an environment that changes every day, we're investing in stability for our program. Amidst the disruption of college sports, Oklahoma will be a place where student athletes will find consistency," end quote. Now, Denny's strategy of leaning into stability amidst a world of current chaos makes sense. College football has undergone some immense changes in the last 5 years since NIL became a thing in 2021. Players are making money. They're able to transfer at will. NCAA eligibility rules have been challenged over and over in court. And many schools have hired general managers for select sports, creating a dynamic that's never existed until now between coaches, administration, and new front office staff. Amongst all the uncertainty, Oklahoma is attempting to position itself as steady, secure, and consistently prepared for what's next. And it all sounds really nice. But why do a new deal with Brent Venables now? Roger Denny's message about stability and consistency was true before this new deal was signed. Venables is about to enter season 3 of a 6-year deal. He wasn't even halfway through the last contract extension that he signed just a scant 2 years ago. And while stability and consistency is important and a good message for current players and potential recruits, what's the ultimate goal of Oklahoma football? Winning football games and winning championships, preferably national championships. And we don't know if Brent Venables is the guy that can do that at Oklahoma. The 2026 season is huge for Brent Venables. Now, he's made a lot of moves in the offseason to address Oklahoma's offensive shortcomings. We've talked about it a lot on the show of late. New running backs coach, new tight ends coach, multiple transfer portal additions in the wide receiver room and the tight ends room. And much of the talk during fall camp about those position groups have mostly been positive, but it's all talk. We got to see how it all comes together in actual games. Roger Denny and Oklahoma's administration choosing to re-up Venables for 2 more years, and in the process bringing Venables into the top 10 of the highest paid coaches in college football, is a signal to me that Roger Denny believes that all of this offseason work by Venables and his staff will absolutely result in winning football in 2026 and beyond. In fact, Denny basically said just that this week to Sooner Scoop's George Stoia. Denny said, quote, "We've seen what our team is capable of under Brent's leadership, and that's what we're investing in. I don't need to see this season to know what we've got," end quote. Personally, I'm not as confident as Roger Denny is, but it doesn't matter. What actually does matter is that the college football season starts in less than 2 weeks, and whether this contract decision is the right move, let's give it 2 years. Maybe Brent Venables will get another contract extension, or maybe he won't. And if you enjoyed that opening take or hated it, we'd still like for you to like this video and subscribe to the West of Everest YouTube channel. And please follow the show on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. I'm Lee Benson. This is West of Everest. Coming up on the show, we'll get Grant's thoughts on Brent Venables' new contract. We have some clarity now on the Jake Maikkula injury. Fortunately, it's not season ending. And we'll talk about the latest news and notes coming out of OU fall camp. And Brady Trantham from Sooners on SI and Through the Keyhole, an Oklahoma football podcast, will join the show to share his on-the-ground takeaways from what he's learned so far during OU fall camp this month. Now it's time for me to say hello to Grant. Grant, what's going on?
Nothing much. I mean, I think we are officially in the games just need to start territory.
Jeez.
And one of the, the cool thing is we are officially in, this is kind of how I think of the offseason, we are officially in bye week number 1. That's kind of what it's like here. It's we got one bye week and then it's going to be game week. So like a week from today, when we're recording next Sunday, it's going to be, game day is going to be 5 days away. So we're essentially there. It's just how quickly or how slowly are these next 12 days going to go? I don't know. My guess, because we're old and we experience time differently, it's going to go really fast.
Yeah, it'll be fast. It'll be fast.
But I found myself, yesterday being Saturday, I found myself thinking like, sweet man, we're a week away from week 0. And you know that it's getting close when you start talking yourself into, man, I'm excited to watch UNLV Memphis.
Yeah. And now you mentioned that, I realized we have a packed show. It's super packed. We got Brady coming on later. I don't even have any week 0 thoughts or anything on the show. We just have too much going on. And then, we're going to get to next week's show. And we're going to have, we got a big season preview coming up. It's insane. And then we'll have week 1 to talk about. So we got a lot of content coming here in the next couple of weeks or so before OU plays UTEP. And I know the opening take was about Brent Venables and that new contract, which just popped up seemingly out of nowhere this week. And you obviously have thoughts on that, but because that's a situation that doesn't really impact this season all that much, let's save that for after we get to all the news and notes of current fall camp. Is that cool with you?
No, it's not.
All right.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Also, one thing too is we've tried to do our best to provide what the listeners want, and the listeners they're going to care about the Brent Venables stuff, but what's more important is fall camp, and because season starts here soon, and probably one of the biggest things we learned, I guess officially, because Brent Venables did address the Jake Maikkula situation, but and we'll talk about that here in a moment, but we have more clarity on it, and I got to give credit to John Hoover of Sooners on SI. He reported earlier this past week that Jake Maikkula has a sprained MCL, and the timetable for his return is 4 to 6 weeks. So great news. It sounds like it's not a season-ending injury for Jake Maikkula. And so that timetable, the early end of it sounds like the Michigan game, and the longer end of it sounds like the Georgia game, or potentially even deeper into the season. And I mentioned Brent Venables a moment ago. He did confirm Friday that he expects Jake Maikkula's injury to be, quote, short-term. And Venables also added, quote, that he expects Jake to be back sooner rather than later. And he also said that that'll be the last time that he talks about that injury until the injury reports and all the availability reports come out. Okay? So moving forward on that, Venables did say that 3 players have been getting reps with Maikkula out, and that's Ryan Fodje, Caleb Nita, and Noah Best. And that was the order with which Venables said the names, not saying that means anything, but I'm just saying that that's the order with which Venables said the 3 guys that are repping at center. And so now that we have a little bit more clarity on that center position and the injury to Maikkula since our last show, how are you feeling about Oklahoma's ability to manage the situation before Maikkula is able to get back healthy?
I got a little heartburn about it. So, and I know we're about to have Brady on in the second half of this episode, but on his solo show on the through the Keyhole Patreon, he said that, if your offense was going to be good this year, one injury to Jake Maikkula should not derail it from being good. And I agree with that. I think that's sound. The thing is, though, I don't know if the offense is going to be good this year. We just had, these last 2 seasons are the worst offenses this century at OU football. And until we see it, then it's kind of hard to believe at this point in time. But, I'm glad that they have a game against UTEP before Michigan. Yeah. And here's the deal. If OU is who we think they are this year, they should go into Michigan and beat Michigan by multiple scores without Jake Maikkula. But we'll see how it is. In terms of who they got working there right now, my feeling is that it's probably gonna, and this is a guess, is that it'll likely be Caleb Nita starting out against UTEP because he's an actual center. He plays the position. We'll see how that goes. If it's a total disaster, then they'll probably go with Fodje. But I know a lot of, and Noah Best has been like a huge kind of star of training camp, and everyone is talking about him. But what do we know about Bill Bedenbaugh? He doesn't really play freshmen. And I know last year Fasusi and Fodje were an exception, but he had Creed Humphrey in the building in 2017, his freshman year, where he redshirted. He didn't play right away, even though they did have a good experienced center in Eric Wren. But even that next season, they still rolled out with Jonathan Alvarez at the beginning because he was experienced, even though it was obvious that Creed Humphrey was the more talented one. And so I don't think in such an important early stretch of the season, I do not think that they are going to roll out Noah Best in Ann Arbor against Michigan as a true freshman. This guy's not a blue chip recruit. He may be one of those under the radar guys that they just found and whatever. But I think people need to probably pump the brakes on Noah Best a little bit. But we'll see. I don't know. You hope that Nita is just serviceable, can get in people's way without totally blowing up the play. Is kind of what you're hoping. So we'll see. But I would much prefer to have Jake Maikkula in there. And about the timeline of everything, like I don't know. I think with injuries, I typically like to be conservative, and
yeah, me too.
And and so my guess is that we probably not even a probably. I don't know. This is my guess, is that it's going to be they would like to have Maikkula back for Georgia. But my guess is that we'll probably first see him against Texas because there's a bye week in between there. That would be like my guess, just based on how injuries have gone under this coaching staff.
Yeah, I'm with you. The early end of that timeline is Michigan. I don't expect him to play against Michigan. I don't think that's going to happen. Again, just a guess.
It could also be one of those things where what if Nita and Fodje at center is a total disaster, and then they start to feel like, gosh, we'd be better off with Maikkula at 75%. Than any of these other options.
Well, then you get into
so there's lots of things that could happen.
What are the chances of him re-injuring, and then you're down, and then you're out for the year? It's just that's the philosophy and the strategy that comes into rehabbing injured guys, right? And I don't think it's going to be a disaster. I just don't. By the way, and this is me probably looking way too far into it, but speaking of the timetable, Venables referencing the weekly availability reports about how that's the next time he's going to talk about it. Is that a hint that he doesn't expect him until SEC play, Maikkula? Because the availability reports don't come out until SEC play.
It could be, but also there's it could be one of those things where, hey, we know that we are not obligated to share anything about this until week 4. We have a really big non-conference game coming up in week 2. And it's all of this sort of this college subterfuge around injuries, which drives me insane. It's so stupid.
It's the worst.
It's so dumb. It just doesn't, who cares if you are targeting Maikkula to play against Michigan? I'm assuming that Michigan is going to prepare like he's going to play anyway. This isn't.
They're coaches. They're going to try to hold on to as many potential advantages they have.
I know, but that's not an advantage. It's dumb. They're but they're
going to hold on to it because it might be. It might be. You never know. In the NFL, you can't do any of this stuff. But in college, you still kind of can to a little bit.
When we go to the 2 super leagues and everybody is playing by the same rules, I hope that it's just no, there's injury reports for everybody, and you cannot get around it. And if you try to get around it, cough, Lane Kiffin, you are going to get in a lot of trouble type things.
All right. Well, so yeah, I don't expect it to be disaster. I know after our show last week, we had some comments, and it wasn't just West of Everest community commenting on the YouTube channel about Caleb Nita. And hey, he played well against LSU last year at Western Kentucky. I know that that's something that Gabe Eichert and other podcast people have said. Podcast people. I know there's been references that Oklahoma really liked that tape from Nita, and that's a big reason why they wanted to bring him in. And so, fortunately, that game is on YouTube, and so I went back and watched it, and I thought Caleb Nita looked just fine and throughout the game, and the rest of his offensive line at Western Kentucky was awful. It was terrible. But for him, I thought he did a nice job. He snapped the ball well. LSU's defense last year was good. Their defensive line, that's a good defense. It's one game. I did like there was a moment where he showed good football IQ. A defensive lineman jumped off sides. He snapped the ball right away. So, okay, it's a heady play. Not every center does that. So it's a small thing, but I thought he looked good or fine. And if he can get Oklahoma through a few games here and there before Maikkula, I think he can do it. And then if he can't, I have confidence. I think they'll be just fine with either Fodje or Noah Best too. It's just now if they start to have multiple injuries along the offensive line, then you start to get to the point where it's okay, but with one guy, I think they can make it work.
One game, sure. What if there's tape of him against UTSA where he's awful? There were singular.
There were singular games. whatever has been given doing tape, and he loved it. I don't know, it's whatever.
Freaking Twitter tape guy. Oh God, I don't care.
He was a former offensive lineman. He played the
sure.
like gay biker doing it.
Yeah.
But
like we saw,
but still, like one. I don't know.
There were singular games where Derek Simmons was good last year, but we all kind of know in hindsight now that he stunk.
No, he didn't stink. He was fine. He's fine. My thing is with the offensive lineman, just how good are you at keeping people in front of you for a few seconds? And he did that for the most part against LSU. So, like, that's what and when you got good guys around him, which we expect Oklahoma's offensive line to be a lot better this year, then it's going to make everybody else look better too. So I'm just not that concerned about it right now. But again, if multiple injuries happen, that's when you start to get more concerned, because I think the depth there is pretty good.
But yeah, if they do roll out Nita for UTEP and he sucks against UTEP, then you got your answer. He's just not good. Like it's as easy as that. So that's a very simple way of looking at it.
Yeah. So let's play it out just real quick, because Venables mentioned 3 guys are repping there. So let's say Nita's the guy, which I think it's probably the best guess that he'll be the guy against UTEP, just because, like you mentioned, he's played center and they brought him in to back up Jake Maikkula. So left to right, the offensive line would probably look like Fasusi, EPL, Nita, Fodje at right guard, and then Amarian Harris, I believe, would be probably the starting 5. Let's say if Noah Best ends up winning that job, surprisingly, then I think it'd probably be that same starting 5, but then you throw Best in there instead of Nita at center. And then the wild card of Ryan Fodje, because I know he's been there's been reports about how he's he's a lot of position flexibility up front. I mean, Fodje can play tackle, he can play guard. Apparently, he can play center too. He's been taking snaps. So if Fodje was a center, then you'd have Fasusi, EPL, Fodje, and then you'd think it'd be Heath Ozaida at right guard. Or if Noah Best is excellent, it'd be a little mixture between Ozaida and Noah Best there, and then Amarian Harris at right tackle. Does that all sound about right to you?
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like, I mean, we're still, regardless of what the combinations are with the center notwithstanding, we're going to see a lot of Ozaida and Best this year. I mean, they're clearly, like, we're going to see a lot of Noah Best against UTEP. He's like, it wouldn't surprise me if, and you hope that OU, is up by 3 or 4 touchdowns halfway through the second quarter. And if that's the case, like, I wouldn't be surprised if like Noah Best plays the most snaps of any guard. Like, they're going to try to probably see what they got, get him some run, especially with the new eligibility rules that redshirts don't exist anymore. So you might as well just throw him out there.
Good call. Let's move it along, and more fall camp news and notes this week, and went through all the availabilities and Brent Venables talked and everything. And so what stood out to me is something that we haven't talked a whole lot about in fall camp, and a name of a player that is going to be an important member of Oklahoma's defense that, again, we haven't really talked a whole lot about, and that's Reggie Powers. Seemed like there was a lot of Reggie Powers buzz this week. Brent Venables talked a lot about him. Owen Heinecke did as well. Peyton Bowen did as well. All praised the junior during availability this week. Venables said about Reggie Powers, quote, "He had a great camp. He's taken another huge step." And there was a lot of the micro side of the position that sounds like Powers was able to improve upon. Heinecke and Peyton Bowen said that Reggie Powers has really grown into that cheetah position after being behind Kendall Daniels last season, learning behind him. Obviously, Powers played it, but he was more of a reserve role last year. Played a lot of snaps, played a bunch of games. And so I think it sounds like, I mean, Reggie Powers he's the cheetah. That's what he's been repping at. And he's not really moving. He has position flexibility, but it sounds like that's the spot he's been in. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Brent Venables rotates the cheetah, rotates linebackers, rotates safeties, given that the goal is to get the best 11 on the field. And you got Cole Sullivan, who can also play cheetah. And you got James Nesta, who's been repping at cheetah as well. And then you throw in at the safety spot, obviously you got Boganowski back there and Peyton Bowen. Boganowski's kind of the player where it's like, well, you can take him off the field and maybe throw Reggie Powers and Cole Sullivan out there together, because Powers can give you that safety look plus with cheetah. So yeah, are you as intrigued with how those rotations are going to look moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the rotation at cheetah is going to be super far away from what it was last year. I think you're going to see Cole Sullivan against like heavier-ish personnel. Like, I think you're probably going to see more Cole Sullivan against Michigan and Georgia, and against Texas, you're going to see more Reggie Powers. So is it that simple? Probably not. But yeah, I mean, Reggie Powers is a guy going into the season I'm not concerned about at all. He was good last year, and he's a blue chip guy. I remember at this time last year, he was sort of one of those up and coming stars of camp where we're like, this guy's got some juice. And I think last season we saw the juice. I mean, he is one of my favorite things about him is that, because, when Kendall Dolby went down in 2024, I think one of the things that it's like, oh, they're going to miss out on this thing that he's really good at, which is just like, I mean, he was really good at timing blitzes from the slot. And for whatever reason, it seems like he put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Reggie Powers is really good at that too. I thought that's when he flashed the most a season ago, is when they kind of let him loose and let him be an athlete and get after the quarterback. So, it kind of goes into the same thing where it's, the defense has totally earned the benefit of the doubt. This is a guy who's in the third year of the program. He put a lot of good stuff, on the field a season ago. It's totally reasonable to expect him to take a jump and be a lot better this year.
And then a linebacker, it's interesting because in our heads, and we know how it works with Brent Venables and all the rotations, and he plays a lot of guys, but I mean, Heinecke and Kip Lewis are great play. I mean, Kip Lewis has been there a lot longer. Heinecke played really well last year, and you expect him to be even better this year. It's hard to imagine those guys just not being on the field, but they're going to have to take some snaps off. And I know that Cole Sullivan can work inside, and he can play all the positions, even repping. You got James Nesta as well. So we're going to see those players. It's just I'm curious to see how many snaps that takes away from Heinecke, how many snaps that takes away from Kip Lewis. And because again, I think we all expect guys like Cole Sullivan, Reggie Powers to be really good this year, and of course we know what we got from Kip Lewis and Owen Heinecke, and you want those players on the field as many snaps as possible, and then we'll see what we get from Michael Boganowski in the back end. Does he make that jump that we all hope he does? So it's fascinating, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm not sure they have the same, because last year it was an obvious. You got Kip and Owen. And then, that second line was McKenzie and Omasigo, two guys who were really experienced and played a lot of snaps. That's not quite the same this year. You still have Lewis and Heinecke, but then after that, on your second line of like inside linebackers, you have Sullivan, who you also think is going to get a lot of reps at cheetah, which I think in bigger personnel, that's basically just like having a Sam linebacker, essentially. And then I think, that fourth guy is probably Nesta. So are you going to see Sullivan and Nesta as like sort of like a, the hockey
Maybe.
Line change thing, or do they go with a little bit more, do they go with more thoughtful things? I don't know. It could also be
they always have either Heinecke or Kip on the field at all times.
And they're not
together. Yeah.
And then, you also have to think about like that green dot stuff where it's like, that's Heinecke, he was sort of forced into that. I think it was against Tennessee last year where he was kind of forced into that role the first time, and he had one of the best games of the season last year against Tennessee. Who's going to be calling the defense when he's not out there? Like, I think that's all stuff that they think about, and they so we'll see. And then it's another thing with UTEP. Like, what happens if against UTEP they get a pretty decent lead and they can start kind of throwing out their 3s and 4s? What happens if like Marcus James is really great against UTEP, and you're like, oh, maybe we can trust this guy with a little bit more type stuff. So sure. I think that's the depth at linebacker, I think, is a little bit more of a concern just because we know how much they like to rotate and do the hockey line changes. So I'm going to be watching that. We'll see if like during the course of the game, like I'm actually in that headspace where I'm like taking a look at it. But I'm curious to see how it works out because it's Brent Venables. That the linebackers behind the top two, they're going to have some ability.
Let's flip it over to the offense. More things that stood out to me during the week of fall practice and the availabilities. And let's talk about the running game. That's huge. So James Nesta did an interview this week, and he said he thinks Oklahoma's offense has shown, quote, more command in the run game, and there's been a lot bigger people for sure. And he was referencing the tight ends. And then speaking of the tight ends, Heath Ozida was talking about the tight ends in the run game, and Ozida said, quote, you get an extra big body in there. It expands the concepts you can do, different presentations. It's better having 6 guys blocking than 5, end quote. And there, like the implication is that Ozida sees the tight end in this offense acting more as an extra offensive lineman at times, or more times compared to maybe how it was used last year. And it makes me think, okay, that's probably a nod to Hayden Hansen because that's why he was brought in here, to block for the most part. But who knows? Maybe Rocky Beers and Jack Van Dorselaer will also surprise us with their with their blocking ability at the point of attack this season. More on Ozida, and then moving from the tight ends, from the offensive line to the running back room. Ozida did say that he thinks the running back room is one of the rooms with the most talent on the team, one of the most talented rooms on the roster. And so there's another week in the books. When it comes to the running game, one, what are your thoughts about any of the things I just brought up there? And two, are you still of the mind that it looks like, as far as the backs go, that it looks like Lloyd Avant, Xavier Robinson, and Jonathan Hatton are your three guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the three guys. I would, health notwithstanding, my guess is those are the three guys that we're going to see most of the time this season. So, I just want to see. I want to see the run game. I want to see what it looks like.
You got to see it. I'm unfortunately the offense has lost the benefit of the doubt. I got to see it. They couldn't run the ball worth a lick a season ago. We'll see if them bringing in all of these tight ends and playing around with 12 personnel. We'll see if that helps. I think I think like a thing that would go a long way to making everything look better is like Xavier Robinson's just got to be healthy, man. Can we keep that guy healthy? Like, that's against UTEP, man. If the offense comes out and they're hot and they're scoring early, man, get Robinson 2 or 3 series and get him the heck out of there. You got to keep him healthy. He hasn't proven that he can stay healthy. So we'll see. And I at this point, and I think the last time there was any update on this, kind of from Deland McCullough, it sounded like Avant was RB1, but I expect it to be Robinson. I think it's going to be. I think Robinson and Avant are gonna kind of be the 1-2 punch going into the season, but. You got to prove it to me, man. And it's the thing. If your run game truly has improved, you've taken a huge step, man, you better run it down UTEP's throat. And I'm talking explosive runs, big holes. Like they just can't do anything about it. That's what you want to see. Mm-hmm. Yeah, an extension of that, another thing that stood out this week is John Mateer had an availability, and we talked a little bit about Gabe Eichert bringing up under center in a recent podcast for the Oklahoma Breakdown podcast, and it stood out to him as how often they were doing it, and not sure how much they're actually going to use it in real games. But John Mateer was talking about under center work this past week, and this is an extension of the run game because we both agree and both believe that you go under center more, and that'll help out the run game, helps out potential play action passes and whatnot. And so with Jake Maikkula out, Mateer has had to take snaps from those other players, Fodje, Noah Best, and Nita. And Mateer was talking about how that really the under center exchange is like the biggest thing where you need a little bit more work to get comfortable with a new guy. He said the shotgun snaps all kind of the same. And Mateer was asked about going under center, and he talked about how in his football career, in his life, he hasn't gone under center a whole lot. He said in high school he didn't do it at all. And then he said at Washington State, it was usually 4th and 1 goal line packages where he'd be under center. But Mateer added that he loves it. And he said, quote, "I'm fascinated by the footwork and eyes and what you can do out there. You like watching NFL film, and that's what they do. So with my feet, they need to be that good one day. So you got to learn it. You got to find out where your eyes can go pre-snap, post-snap, and it's a lot of fun," end quote. So we got some talk about under center, all the 12 personnel stuff. We're getting close enough to the season now. I think we should all remember all of this buzz and all of this talk like down the line, because when Oklahoma finally starts to play some games and we're tracking all this stuff, we're tracking personnel packages, we're watching the running backs out there, how the tight ends are blocking, how if it's really factoring that much into the run game. I wonder how all of this talk, that under center 12 how it's going to look and how it's going to seem to us 6 weeks from now. There's no tell.
We'll see. I mean, I'm curious for sure. There's a part of me that's a little, it's a lot, man, changing. Like, I don't think they went under center at all a season ago. And the run game is
very little. That play you referenced last week, that horrible
that's
snap
right,
against
the 4th down against Ole Miss.
Yeah, that was under center.
So the run game in general, not just under center, like we said, is ballet. It's more about timing and everybody being on the same page. And of course, there is a aspect of just big people moving big people up front too. But a lot of that has to kind of be in concert with each other. And sounds like it, based off of these reports from practice, it sounds like they're adding a lot of new wrinkles or things that maybe they're going to base out of in the run game. And on one end, it's like, well, you got Bill Bedenbaugh, and he'd be kind of one of your first choices as a guy to head that up. But also at the same time, it's hard not to forget that the running game last year was a total disaster. They just couldn't do it. And it seems like they're changing it around. And there's an argument to be made there where it's like, yeah, it sucked last year. Just scrap this thing and do something that's better. But I got to see it. It's certainly intriguing. I mean, I like the play action passing game from 12 personnel under center can be lethal, totally lethal.
Yeah, it'd just be weird to have
we'll
that
see what it looks like.
It'd be weird to have that as part of Oklahoma's arsenal, like on a regular basis. And I don't think anyone's saying it's going to be, but if that's in their toolkit and it's something that they're not terrible at, that's actually effective, that's intriguing.
Yeah, and there's stuff. I mean, my favorite run play in the history of football is probably, like 11 personnel, 12 personnel under center, like the big long stretch zone play. I love stretch out of under center because you can do so much in terms of play action passing out of that because the action on it is you have to follow it, and then once the quarterback pulls that ball back and then snaps their head and looks downfield, I mean that can be, I mean, if you can get that down, essentially if you get that down and you are really adept at running that, it's hard, it's just like impossible to be upset by a team that's worse than you because you just run it down their throat and then and so we'll see. I hope it works out, man. I hope it works out. I'm always kind of fun where it's like I'm this guy who's just like doubting everything, but especially people maybe who are like new to listen to the podcast this offseason, where it's like as soon as it starts working in real life, like I will flip instantly and become the world's biggest homer. I can't wait. I hope that happens. That'd be great.
It's true. And that's the thing is we try to, again, our tagline is thoughtful, nuanced, our opinions of the show and interesting. It's just like, we're not just going to give you a bunch of homer thoughts and takes. You can get that a lot of different places, but we're not directly connected with the program. So we don't feel like we have to just always say positive stuff. We love football and we love OU and we want them to win every single game. And so you can't you can't do that. Like if there's issues, there's issues, but hey, we're going to say positive things about this team whenever there's great things to say. Look at the defense. I mean, like the only negative thing we say about the defense, and it's all relative because we want them to be even better, is like the secondary can be better. It should be better, but it's still a good secondary. It's still a really good secondary. It's just that's the level of play that they've raised themselves since Brent Venables has been here. By the way, Arbuckle mentioning Washington State and going under center. Did want to make a small correction from our last show. So I was talking about how 12 personnel, I was tracking that at Washington State. And I went back and watched an extra game from the 2024 Washington State season. And so I said on the last show that I watched the Apple Cup. That was the third game. That was a misnomer. I actually watched the Texas Tech game from 2024. And this was obviously before Texas Tech was Texas Tech from last year. So they weren't as good. Well, they weren't even really near as good in 2024 as they were in 2025. But it was against Texas Tech where Arbuckle and the offense ran 12 personnel on the field for 16 of 66 plays, which was a little more than 24% of snaps against Texas Tech under 12 or with 12 personnel. 11 personnel, 41 plays. That was 62%, and 10 personnel for 9 plays of 13%. So quick correction there on that. So we'll see. I mean, I think Gabe Eichert said recently, I know I reference those guys a lot, but it's just because they're seeing practice. They actually get to go and watch, and it's public. And he mentioned that it's possible that they could even double the 12 personnel snaps this year from like 9% to closer to 20%, 15 or 20. So maybe that's realistic. We'll see.
We'll see. I hope they're good at it. Find what you're good at and run it until it's stopped. Football can be really simple sometimes.
All right, let's talk about the Brent Venables contract and give Grant a chance to opine on it. And so, talked about it in the opening take, new contract for Brent Venables, a new 6-year deal. Pete Thamel reporting that on average he'll get paid $10.5 million per year. And so if we do the math on that that adds up to a 6-year, $63 million new contract for Venables. And just for context, so 2 years ago in June of 24, Venables signed a new deal, 6 years, $51.6 million. And so that meant that on average, he was making $8.6 million a year. And for further context, Venables' first contract when he was hired at Oklahoma in 2022, technically 2021, but for the 2022 season, his first contract, Venables, was for 6 years at $43.5 million, and that was at $7.25 million guaranteed. So Venables, in 4 years, he started out making $7.25 million his first year as Oklahoma's head coach, and now moving forward, he's making reportedly $10.5 million a year. That's a $3 million raise in 4 years. And what that does, and before I let Grant jump in, and I mentioned this in the opening take, that does get Venables into the top 10 of highest paid coaches in all of college football. And I actually haven't done the SEC math on it, but let me quickly do it in my head. He is now he's
like 7th in the SEC.
He's 5th in the SEC now. And this is tough to come across because there's lots of numbers out there. USA Today is the main resource for this coach's salary ranking. The thing is, their most recent rankings are updated from last year. I think it was October of 25. And so I expect USA Today, just based on timeline, maybe by middle of the season this year, they'll have an updated ranking. But I was able to find Yahoo Sports. They've updated it because Curt Cignetti got another deal. Kalen DeBoer got another deal. And so right now, Brent Venables is 10th. According to Yahoo Sports, he's 10th in all of college football in head coaches and their yearly salary, and 5th in the SEC. And real quick, I'll go over the top 10. Kirby Smart, number 1, 13.1, 13.3, somewhere in there is what he's making. There's been conflicting reports on that, but he's the highest. Cignetti is at $13 million now at Indiana. Lane Kiffin also at $13 million. That's his new deal at LSU. Ryan Day at 4, $12.6 million. DeBoer is at 5 at $12.5 million. Lincoln Riley's making $11.5 million at USC. Dabo's right below him at $11.4 million. You got Sark at $11.1. And then Mike Elko at A&M is at $10.8. Brent Venables at number 10. Now, reportedly, $10.5 million. And Brent Venables is now making more money than Dan Lanning. Eli Drinkwitz is making 10.3 apparently, which that's crazy. And also Venables is making more money than Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, who's making $10 million. And just for reference, Mark Norvell is getting paid a lot of money at Florida State. He's at 10.3. So we'll see if he can save his job again, I guess, this year. But after that entire preamble, Grant, your thoughts on the Venables situation?
I can't see how anybody is against this. I mean, this is obviously just like the administration just thinks that they got something special. They're seeing stuff behind the scenes. They see the team. They think they got a really special team. It kind of sounds like. So start printing those SEC championship Atlanta tickets. Start doing that. Like, hey, I would feel much, much more different about this if, like, say, I don't know, like a couple of years ago, they did this exact same thing before the worst season Oh, they did that, didn't they? Huh. Weird. I don't know. Listen, geez, man, I don't know. I'm nobody's going to be surprised to think that I am amongst the chorus of people who thinks that there's just no reason to do this right now, like at all. Zero. It's kind of online. It's turned into like a proxy fight about basically whether or not you think Brent Venables is the guy or not. There's a lot of OU fans who just really like Brent Venables, have a lot of faith in Brent Venables, and just desperately want him to be the guy. I'm in the camp of, I need you to win more football games. It's that simple. It's that simple. He's got the worst record in a 4-season stretch for an OU coach since the mid-90s. That's unacceptable. It needs to be better. That's what it is. I'm receptive to some arguments that this isn't that big of a deal. I'm sure I'm maybe receptive to that. And if you kind of look at it in terms of where now he is like amongst SEC coaches. Like it's just sort of like this is just the market and everything. I'm receptive to those arguments and I'm okay with that. I need to see what the buyout number is. I need to see what it is. Because the biggest issue with the thing 2 years ago is that it raised the buyout to a point that was kind of unreasonable for what he had produced up to that point. And my assumption is that the buyout number went up with this.
I'm sure
Jimmy Sexton is Brent Venables' agent. Jimmy Sexton is famous or infamous, depending on how you want to look at it. He's a good agent. And I highly doubt that there isn't like a buyout number going up with all of this. So this is very obviously a bet. And you saw it with Roger Denny's comments about stability and, with everything going crazy in college sports right now, they're investing in stability. And this is what they want to project out into the world. Sure, I that's a take, I guess. I still would like to see you win more football games.
And like I said in the opening take, that message from Roger Denny was still a thing before he signed this deal. Why not just see what happens this year? And here's the thing is I understand there's the argument that let's say OU has another 10-2 year in the regular season, makes the playoff, or heck, does even better. Maybe Brent Venables wins the playoff game. Maybe they win the national championship. And then, now you got to pay him even more. So what? Pay him. Who cares? Indiana just did that with Curt Cignetti. They just paid him $13 million. If Oklahoma watched 2026 and Venables was excellent again, who cares if it goes up? So what? You pay the guy.
If they win a natty, pay him $20 million a year. I don't
Who cares?
I don't care at all. Yeah.
So I just don't. I don't find it. I get that that's an argument of like, you're getting him at a good deal right now. Like, sure, but also it's worth the risk of not locking him in my opinion. Seeing if he does well this year. If he does well and his price goes up, so what? Pay him more. Who cares? Alternatively, another reason why maybe this isn't that big of a deal. Maybe this is also signaling. Maybe the buyout stuff doesn't matter that much. Maybe Oklahoma, if it turns into a disaster, maybe they're like, you know what, screw it. We'll pay the money. We'll get out. Dude, like we don't care. Like maybe it's worth the risk to show this stability, to signal this stability. Because yeah, of course, Roger Denny, they think that this is going to work out. Fine, maybe it will. They're the ones, as in Roger Denny, the administration, everybody, Joe Harris, everybody involved, they are the ones with all the information here. They have more information than anybody else in the world. They are the closest to this. They are the only ones that can know, in theory, if all of this is going to result in an excellent Oklahoma season. Because we all think, we know as much as we can, but we're not inside like they are. So if their bet is that Oklahoma is that Venables is the guy, and, we're hoping that Denny's saying that we know what we're going to get out of Brent Venables, we've seen it, doesn't mean, that means we're going to see 32-20 over 4 years. That's not great. Like, hopefully he means like we've seen it last year where they made the playoff and that's only going to get better. I'm sure that's what he means. Is he going to win a national championship? That's the question. We don't know. And it's hard. It's hard to do that. It's just, it's really easy fodder that you look over at Texas people and they're just laughing about it. Like, okay, like, and I know it's not the end all be all, but whenever opposing teams, are cheering things that your team likes, that's never really a good sign, whether it's in a game or here. And that's a small thing. It's kind of like a whatever thing. But take yourself away from this whole situation. If you're a fan of, I don't know, if you're a huge college football fan that loves Minnesota football, and you hear this news, you're probably thinking, why are they doing that with Brent Venables? Like, they were good last year, but what's the business sense in doing that? And that's kind of where I am. It's like, it just doesn't seem to make much business sense. But again, I'm not a business person, so who knows? And maybe we'll find out. Maybe a year from now, or maybe in 6 months, we'll have more of a thought on this. Like, I don't know. Yeah, obviously, if Oklahoma is excellent this year again, then it's like, whatever, who cares? But what if they aren't? What if they aren't? I mean, you've already said, and I don't know. I mean, this is debatable, but you've already mentioned how in 2027 they may be worse. We'll have to find a new quarterback. They're going to be graduating some guys. I mean, defensively, I'm not really worried about defense. It seems like they're figured that out. But offensively, if it's not good again,
This is where it gets interesting, and this is the part of college sports that is frustrating to me because a lot of it is done in secrecy. There's a lot of people who have theorized that it's like, do you really think that they would do this extension and raise the buyout if they didn't have the thumbs up and the approval by kind of like their big money donors type thing, who typically like at Texas A&M, LSU, that's who paid the buyout for Jimbo Fisher and Brian Kelly. That's kind of where that money comes from along the time. So people have theorized maybe that's, they wouldn't have done this without that input. And I hope so. I hope that's the case. Because then that, the whole it's not my money argument, then that makes a whole lot more sense in that regard. I don't know if it's that simple, just because when I say this, Oklahoma is not poor. They're able to play the game to a certain extent, but they are not big spenders in the transfer portal. They do not throw money around in the transfer portal. Is that because they don't want to, or is that because they can't? I'm not sure. I don't know what it is. And so you bring up the 2027 thing. They are going to be worse in 2027. At this point in time, they have not demonstrated any sort of desire or want to spend big money in the transfer portal. And so I tend to think that I think OU right now is betting on zigging while everybody else is zagging. Essentially, this is kind of the new reality of college sports. We are going to invest in our sort of professional style front office type deal, along with Brent Venables, who's maybe a little bit better of like a defensive specialist, maybe more of like a CEO type thing. We'll see. This is their bet. And like it'd be one thing, right, if he was now like the third or fourth highest paid coach in college football, and he's not. But we'll see if that bet pays off. But I think, you just saw Indiana win a national championship, building their team through the transfer portal. You saw, Ohio State winning the year before. They had a lot of remnants kind of left over from like sort of that last hurrah of building blue chip ratio sort of depth across the board. And then they took really, really high profile guys from the SEC and then filled in those gaps. And then were by far the best team in college football. We'll see. I don't know. OU feels really, really confident, obviously, internally about their front office structure and how that works with Brent Venables and his staff. I need to see them win more football games.
That's the thing. I also need to see them win more games, but apparently Roger Denny does not need to see that, at least in 2026, to make this move. And by the way, and we'll talk more about this. We got Brady Trantham coming up. We'll ask him about it. I want to get going, though, because we got to get to him soon. But and by the way, Brady has been in Norman all month covering OU fall camp, and we'll ask him about the most important things that he's learned about the Sooners this month. And again, we'll talk to him about that Brent Venables contract, that new contract. And speaking of new, we had a new West of Everest community poll this week posted to YouTube and Twitter X. And the question was, which young player who's received fall camp buzz are you most looking forward to seeing in an actual game? And the options were Tank Carrington, Noah Best, Elijah Thomas, and Jonathan Hatton. And on YouTube, with 45% of the vote, Jonathan Hatton came in first place. In second place, with 34%, was Elijah Thomas. Noah Best third, Tank Carrington fourth. And on X, it was actually a tie between Tank Carrington and Jonathan Hatton. And personally, my pick is Elijah Thomas. I got to see if all of this buzz of late is legitimate or not. Grant, who's your pick?
I want to see Carrington.
Carrington?
That's my big one. Yeah, I like big, fat, athletic defensive linemen.
Cool. If you want to participate in future polls, be sure to subscribe to the West of Everest YouTube channel. I've got a massive update on our first big goal of reaching 500 subscribers. Now, last week's episode really took off. It took off on YouTube, and that helped us pick up a lot of new subscribers. Right now, at last check, we are at 406. Just a huge increase since our last show. In fact, an 18% increase to be exact. So thank you for subscribing to the West of Everest YouTube channel, and hello to all the new subscribers out there. And if you're new, please like West of Everest on Facebook and follow the show on Instagram and on Twitter X. And lastly, even if you just watch this show here on YouTube, please go to Apple Podcasts, please go to Spotify and follow the show. We're trying to grow the show organically, and we need your help. West of Everest strives to give you authentic, thoughtful, and nuanced opinions about OU football and the college football world. And if you like this show and you listen to this show, you're probably an expert when it comes to OU football. And so our goal is to assist you in continuing to be that expert and becoming the most interesting and knowledgeable person in your Sooners group chat. And before we get to our interview with Brady, we need Grant to address a question that we received from a subscriber on YouTube. And the YouTube commenter is at CollarSup63. He says, Grant, I really like the comment about pocket presence. This is based off of our last episode and talking about John Mateer. Would take that improvement for every quarterback, especially John Mateer. Footwork is a second thing. Question for Grant. Grant mentioned that he didn't think Oklahoma did enough in the offseason to improve the offense. What are your expectations? And Collars Up real quick says, in my opinion, addressing that question, he says, Oklahoma added experience and production at tackle, wide receiver, and wide receiver. There are 3 P4 starters in high production. Oklahoma also added depth at running back and offensive line. Plus, they returned a bunch of guys that are legit SEC starters. I'm not suggesting Oklahoma has a top 5 offense, but that is a great deal of work in the offseason. I get that Oklahoma was not good on offense until they proved otherwise. How are you? You are who you are. Sorry, I'm kind of bungled that last part. Anyways, Grant, address that question, please.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, this really gets into what do we want this season to be for Oklahoma. Where I'm coming from. This is 5th year under Brent Venables. Oklahoma is, in terms of college football hierarchy and history, is there with Alabama and Ohio State. I know what Alabama and Ohio State's expectations are. It's to win the Natty every single year. Where in year 5 of Brent Venables, I think it's a reasonable expectation that in year 5, Oklahoma competes at a nationally elite level after 5 years because this is Oklahoma. I think they have a chance to have the best defense in college football this year. That tells me this needs to be an all-in season. And in my opinion, they did not spend enough money in the transfer portal in the offseason. Yes, I understand that they went out and they got all of those tight ends. They seem to think internally that that was a really, really big part of why they weren't good on offense last year. I'm doubtful of that. I think a much bigger deal with why they weren't good on offense last year is because they kind of sucked at the skill positions outside of Isaiah Satania. And I think it all comes down to whether or not you think Trell Harris and Parker Livingston are good enough guys who scare defenses. I think Parker Livingston has a better chance of being a guy who scares defenses than Trell Harris. I'd be ecstatic to be wrong about that. I hope they bring both of those guys in and they're great. I don't think they have enough guys who scare defenses with the ball in their hand. And I think that was the main reason why they sucked on offense a season ago. They had nobody who could make anybody miss. Like not a single person. Isaiah Satania, I don't even think is really sort of. Like you saw most of that on he doesn't have a lot of wiggle. He's fast.
Yeah, he does.
He really does.
Yes, he does.
He doesn't.
Returning punts, yeah, he makes people miss. Yeah. He always seems to make at least one guy miss.
Go watch back when he's playing offense and catching passes. How often is he making dudes miss? It's not happening very often.
All right, I'm going to go back and watch every single snap, and I'm going to count every single missed tackle he forces.
So,
or we should just go to Pro Football Focus. They probably have it, right?
And I like Xavier Robinson. I think Xavier Robinson is a good player. I think it's foolish to think that he's going to be healthy for the entire season because we just haven't seen it yet. And as I've said, he's been healthy for 4 games in his career at OU. That's a very, very small percentage of the games where he's been dressed. I like Lloyd Avant as a depth piece, but and I know they're scared because the Jade Knott thing last year was a total disaster, but I thought they needed more at running back. And I'm not satisfied with saying, hey, they got Jonathan Hatton coming in. That doesn't satisfy me. So too long didn't read. They might have the best defense in college football, which means go out and get dudes on offense, because if they got dudes on offense, they can win a national championship. Go and do it. There's nothing better for the stability of the program than winning tons of games.
Yeah, I agree. That'll change up a recruiting class. That'll change up the future of a program pretty quickly. Just ask Indiana. That's the easy.
And he even says I'm not suggesting OU has a top 5 offense. That welcome to college football. You kind of need one to win a national championship.
You don't need one. We talked about that last week.
You don't absolutely need one. But if you don't have one, the other unit better be like the best in the country.
Better force 30 takeaways instead of like 11 or whatever, or 13 like they did last year. All right. Thank you to @ColorsUp63 for the comment and question. Appreciate you watching on YouTube and interacting with the show. We hope that you continue to be a member of the West of Everest community as the season moves along. All right, let's talk to Brady Trantham. Brady covers Oklahoma for Sooners on SI. He's got several stories up there on their website as we speak. Plus, Brady co-hosts Through the Keyhole, an Oklahoma football podcast. And Brady also has his own Patreon show called The Brady Trantham Show. I suggest that you consume all of Brady's content. So without further ado, let's get to the interview. We're now joined by Brady Trantham of Sooners on SI and several other media properties. And Brady, don't worry, I plugged all of your stuff before you came onto the show, so I'm not intentionally omitting any of your work on purpose. And also, I apologize for no intro music today, so going to have to ask you to bring your own energy.
I'm going to try.
Get it going.
I'm going to try. We've got one more week of fall camp. I am so tired of writing about this team when they've not played a single game yet, not a single snap yet, but we're getting there, so I'm going to do my best. I probably have one more week of manufacturing energy as much as I can before it's just like, okay, please play football so we can talk about that.
I share your annoyances. We actually had a chance to meet up yesterday. Thank you for hosting a nice little get together. And it seems like, and some other media members are there, and everybody is kind of like, can we just see football? Can we see something new to write about and talk about? Ugh.
Yeah. And the funny thing is just, remembering when I was younger and reading all this stuff, like around this time of year, like during fall camp, you can't help but, especially like if you fast forward to the season, some of those things that are written about in the offseason, they may come to pass. Some of them may not. And then you kind of go back to like having a memory of like maybe stories you read about a particular player or a particular side of the ball that was supposed to be like awesome according to all these stories that came out during fall camp. And then they start playing the games and that doesn't come to pass. And you just kind of go, all these writers lied to me. Like, well, they just fluff piece after fluff piece. Well, when all you do is talk to one team or one set of players or one coach, you're only going to hear like good stuff. And that's all. That's what you are just there to be the arbiter for, like their message of like, here's what they said. We're not trying to sit here and tell you this is our opinion that we think that they're going to be awesome. And when asked for our opinion, we will give it. But again, we're all just waiting until they play football, and we're all waiting for them to either succeed or fail. And then we'll pivot on maybe some opinions we might have had in August.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And that's why it's so important, as if you're a fan of the team, obviously a media member, just somebody that covers this stuff or follows along, to get familiar with the types of reporters that are out there, understand, and like who's feeding you information, and then kind of grade it later on, because then you can figure out who do you trust, who do you not. Like when you hear something, like, do you take it with a grain of salt, or do you put a lot of stock into it? And the best example for the last couple of years is that anytime we hear anything positive about the defense, at this point, it's like, well, they've earned the benefit of the doubt, so it's possible that that's probably true. But anything with the offense, it's like, I got to see that to believe it. And okay, but let's just jump in, and I'll let you hit on that in a second. But I wanted to ask you the first question. Besides the whole Brent Venables contract news, which is big, which everyone's talking about, and we'll get to that here in the show, and then the Jake Maikkula update, which I know was big this week. I want to, aside from that stuff, because we'll talk about that, I got separate questions for you on that. Aside from that, this week at practice, what's the most important thing that you learned, if anything?
Well, I think there's two things. One, we did get confirmation that Ryan Fodje is working out at center. How many first team reps is he getting? That's something we don't know. I think the going assumption, if you asked anybody else on the beat, like who play number one against UTEP, who's going to trot out there as the starting center, I think we'd all say Caleb Nita, just based on he's played center at the college level. Everyone kind of goes back to his game, Western Kentucky against LSU, as like, see, like he's a competent center. So that makes the most sense, especially when the other candidates are Noah Best as a true freshman who's had glowing reviews since the spring, not just during fall camp, but even going back to the spring when we would just ask about general questions of offensive line depth. every single person we would ask those general questions would bring up Noah Best. So he's been getting a lot of hype since spring, but he is still a true freshman. And then Ryan Fodje, who is kind of Bill Bedenbaugh's Swiss Army knife on the offensive line now. He can play basically any position. During fall camp, he's played left tackle, while Fasusi has essentially been bubble wrapped. He's fine, but they probably just are like, yeah, you don't need to practice in fall camp. It's okay. We know you're good. Fodje, go over there to learn another position. So I think just knowing that Fodje gives them that versatility, I mean, it can't be a bad thing. And ideally, do you want someone so tall being your center? I don't know how much that matters. At this level, it really shouldn't matter, but I understand it's probably not the most ideal situation. And Lee, you'll like this because you guys on your podcast have been talking about, like, are they actually going to do 12 personnel? Is Ben Arbuckle going to change up his offense so much just for this roster, just for John Mateer? Like, we have all those questions. I mean, John did kind of hint that the biggest difference with like a different center, in the wake of Jake Maikkula's injury, is just under center. He brought that up himself. So you could read into that of like, yeah, they are definitely doing a lot of under center work during the offseason to prepare for the 2026 season. What does that mean? We don't know. But at this level, it really shouldn't matter how big, small, tall your center is. Like, you should be able to have a good center quarterback exchange no matter what. So I think that Fodje being confirmed a Swiss Army knife is a big thing that I learned. And then also just another little hint of, seems like the running backs are getting coached by someone who knows what they're doing. I mean, Brent Venables was asked about Xavier Robinson, and I can't remember the exact quote, but he essentially said that Deland McCullough is teaching him a lot of the fundamentals that contextually, according to Brent's answer, he was not taught or did not know or did not have a firm grasp of in his first few years on campus, that he now is getting taught by Deland McCullough. And I know you guys have opinions about Tory Blaylock. We're all excited about Jonathan Hatton, but he is also an 18-year-old true freshman. Who knows? He has the physical tools to do it, in my opinion. But when healthy, Xavier Robinson is the running back. He's running back one for this team, and we've seen him do it at a high level against great competition already. And the big thing for him is just, unfortunately, has just been availability. So in the event that he is available, if Deland McCullough is unlocking something new in Xavier Robinson, that excites me as well.
Brady, what about the Jake Maikkula injury? You already just mentioned Ryan Fodje there, and you said that Caleb Nita is, if you had to guess, would probably be the guy who comes out against UTEP. I'm kind of curious about, do you think Noah Best has a chance to play there at all? The more that I game it out and think about it, I don't think we're really going to see him at all at center. What do you think?
I mean, without having seen Caleb Nita play at this level, and I've seen the tape of him going up against LSU, and while LSU was not a good team last year, I mean, they still had talent. I mean, I'm not going to look at that tape and say, not good enough. I'm not of that opinion, but I think that there's something to be said about Noah Best potentially having a higher ceiling than a Caleb Nita, just judging off of athleticism, even with him being an 18-year-old true freshman. But at the same time, I don't know if you want to go into the big house in Ann Arbor with an 18-year-old snapping the ball or being in charge of alignments and like, you've got this guy, we've got this guy. That's a lot of pressure. And people have brought up Creed Humphrey. I think people do kind of forget that Creed Humphrey did redshirt his true freshman year. He did not start as a true freshman. He was in the program for an entire year, learning Lincoln Riley's offense and how much pressure and stress I'm sure centers go under with his offensive schemes. It would be a lot to ask an 18-year-old, but I think that there's something to be said about, hey, maybe there's something more that you can get out of a Noah Best, considering that he's been this guy that has been talked about since winter, since spring with this team. I want to believe that. At the same time, if OU's schedule wasn't so terribly hard in the first 5-6 weeks of the season, I think you could realistically think like, yeah, maybe you could see a true freshman start at center for the first time since I mean, I've been trying to think, when was the last time an actual true freshman started? And it might have been 2005 what was his name? John Bush, I think was his name.
I was going to say, I kind of feel like the last time a true freshman started at center was probably Vince Carter, right?
In 2001, yeah, you might be right.
I think so.
You have to go, you have to go all the way back to the early Stoops days for that to happen. And a lot of that is happening out of necessity. It's not necessarily because, hey, this guy like truly won out over a veteran. It's like, yeah, well, they either lost somebody to graduation or the draft the year prior, or there's an injury. And here's an example kind of similar to that with the Jake Maikkula injury. I do think you're going to see him, at least here in UTEP, because UTEP is an awful football team. And I think it would be kind of a disservice to a lot of the great work Noah Best has done. I think just judging by what Brent Venables and his teammates have said about him, I think he's earned playing time. Even if Jake Maikkula wasn't hurt, I think you would have seen Noah Best snap a ball or two against UTEP if everything goes according to plan. So I think we're going to see him. I just don't think it's going to be as a starter. And in the event that he doesn't start against UTEP, I think it's probably safe to assume, well, he's probably not going to start against Michigan. And the only way that he would see the field against Michigan or against Georgia if Maikkula is still not returned is if Nita, that experience just is a disaster. Like balls getting snapped over John Mateer's head, not picking up blitzers. It's so comically bad that they have no choice but to put Noah Best out there. I think that that's the only time that we would see him.
Yeah, I do think it's worth. I think it's a valuable question to ask at this point in time, and it's a question we're going to need an answer to in 12 to 19 days. Is Fodje getting snaps at center right now? Is that more of an insurance policy just to bridge the gap before Maikkula comes back, or is it because Caleb Nita is not very good? I think that's and of course, right? Like it kind of looks like in terms of other centers they have, I'm thinking of like a guy like Owen Heinecke or something like that. That's obviously not an option for them. And so they probably are just thinking, we do have a center here. We just, what if he goes down though? Obviously other people need to be repping it. But I'm curious whether it's still just sort of like an open competition or if, or it's just going to be Nita until Maikkula is back and they're giving Fodje reps just in case, like Nita's disaster or he gets hurt. But like what you said about Noah Best, I think, Noah Best's going to play a ton against UTEP. I've theorized at the beginning of the show that it wouldn't surprise me if he gets the most snaps of any of the guards in that game, just in general, because of the redshirt rule not existing anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. I mean, again, UTEP is bad, and if the offense has truly made the jump that we're all hoping that they did, that game should be well over early or late in the first quarter, if not early in the second quarter. So that's when you start not necessarily pulling all the starters, but you start putting in a lot of the reserve guys, getting them experience. And the earlier in the game that you get these guys experience, the more important it is. So I think we're going to see a lot of Noah Best. And if that be the case, he'll probably end up finishing out a lot of the game deep into the second half. So that would be good for his development. And just like, here's college football. It's even UTEP. It's like, it's a step up in competition than what he's seen outside of course, practicing against. And I asked Brent Venables, like, how, other than like the physical and mental aspects that you try to build or develop with a young player like Noah Best, like how else can you develop somebody like that hasn't played at this level? And he just said, essentially, I mean, he's going up against Jaden Jackson and David Stone. There's really nothing better to do as a young player than go up against that every day. So, and I tend to agree with him. That's great development for a young player. But in terms of Fodje, I mean, I would say so. It's more of an emergency situation just because, look, Caleb Nita, like, because I know like Sooner Scoop, they had like an entire opinion piece on him on their latest podcast from last week. And I'm not going to sit here and say that they're wrong. What I would sit there and say is I disagree with anybody having a take on Caleb Nita because we've not seen him play like at OU. We've not seen him play against competition that OU's going to see. There is such things as players transferring from smaller schools, getting developed, and improving. Until Caleb Nita proves to be good or bad, I think it's silly to just waste your time of having a take on him. I understand the concern. I get that, but Jim Nagy, OU brought him here for a reason. And the way that I judge players at a place like OU is you're here. You're at one of the blue bloods of this sport, so you are good until you prove otherwise. And so that's kind of the standard that I'm holding him accountable to is if Caleb Neita is truly the next guy up, which according to the report when Maikkula went down in that Saturday scrimmage, Caleb Neita was the guy who filled in for him, which is why I think he's getting the brunt of the first team reps, just out of assumption. Noah Best is probably getting a healthy little dose just in case, and then Fodje is getting the rest, whatever is left over. In terms of reps at center. But if Neita is truly that next guy, then he is the next guy. He is going to be the starter for the University of Oklahoma, and therefore he should be good. If they brought him here, then they think that he's good. If he's on the field, then he should be good enough. He's coached by Bill Bedenbaugh. He's going up against David Stone and Jaden Jackson and all those guys every day. He should be well prepared for what he's about to see in a few weeks, and if not against Michigan as well. Like, he should be well prepared, and until he proves to not be, if this be the case, if he's not good enough and he proves to not be good enough, then we can start having opinions on who should be playing and who shouldn't be playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's from like a prudent standpoint, I think that's fair. It is talking season though. And if you had to put a gun to my head, I would guess Caleb Neita is probably not very good. But you're right. If he's not good, as you said, we will see it against UTEP pretty clearly.
I did want to reference, because you mentioned a little bit ago Fodje's height, Brady, about as a center. Jake Maikkula is listed as taller than Ryan Fodje on the roster. I don't know how accurate that is, so I don't know if height that matters. If Maikkula is a center,
maybe
6'6", it's giant.
Maybe not height, but Fodje just seems he seems like a much larger person. Like when they're standing next to each other, it's just Fodje just looks like a mountain. And again, I don't know if that
Fodje's
matters.
huge.
Yeah, I don't know if that matters, and frankly, it really shouldn't matter.
I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, you're right.
No, I don't think it should matter. I mean, Creed Humphrey's a big dude too. I think Creed Humphrey's like 6'3", 6'4", which I know it's shorter than that, but yeah. Okay, let's stay with the offense. On the Oklahoma Breakdown podcast lately, Teddy Lehman claimed that he thinks Jonathan Hatton might be a dude, and they've been looking for dudes in the running back room. Now, he didn't say that it was going to be, slam dunk, he's going to be awesome or anything this year, but that's what he said. He said that he has the makings of it. So, Brady, and you talked about Xavier Robinson a little bit earlier, but the running back room, how are you feeling about the state of the running back room as we are now less than 2 weeks away from the first game?
Well, I wish Tory didn't have a hamstring injury, because who knows how long that lasts. That could linger for a few weeks. That could linger for the entire season. And he's already been a player that we've seen that once he gets an injury, it affects his play, and then he tends to pick up more injuries as it goes along. So you just hope that that's not the case. But in terms of the state of the running back room, I mean, I know you guys have an opinion on him. I think he's a good college back. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean he can be an awesome OU back or an awesome SEC back. I think he's just kind of a good college back that he's proven thus far as just with 1 year under his belt. But in terms of the state of the running back room, I'd just rather him be healthy. But outside of that, I think Xavier, Jonathan Hatton, Lloyd Avant, that trio of guys that we know are healthy and hopefully will be healthy over the next 2 weeks before they start playing games that matter. That's a winning trio, in my opinion. We know Xavier Robinson can do it. I think Lloyd Avant has a consistent nature about him. That's essentially what Deland McCullough has said about him. That's what Brent Venables has said about him. I mean, Deland's big quote on him was, I don't think that there is a mistake he's made twice, meaning that anytime he does make a mistake, he learns from it. And that's, I mean, God forbid somebody get better, because I know that we have such high expectations for players at a place like OU, and we expect them to be balling out on day one, snap one. But sometimes guys can just get better. Sometimes it takes a minute for guys or a few years for guys to develop, and then they become awesome players. And I know Lloyd Avant coming from Colorado State, that may not excite a lot of people considering how bad they were last year. But if Deland McCullough thinks he's good, then who am I to argue with that? And then with Jonathan Hatton, it is just, I mean, I wrote about this this past week. It is really hard to not look at him like when we've been able to go out to practice. It's really hard to not look at him at ground level and not think Adrian Peterson, Joe Mixon, DeMarco Murray, even like that level of physically gifted running back that you can just look at him and say, that dude is a stud. I have those same thoughts about Jonathan Hatton. Now, we've not seen him play a snap at this level, so it could all be for naught. But when you hear from Xavier Robinson that he got clocked at around 22 some odd miles per hour at 235 pounds, that's insane. Now, kind of the one question I have for him, other than can he take the physical toll? And I think at his size, the easy assumption is, well, yeah, he should be able to. But everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the face, So God forbid, hopefully he's not soft, but for all we know, maybe somebody gets hit at this level and they're just like, whoa, that is not what I expected. So that's a possibility. I don't think so with Jonathan Hatton. But one of the questions I have about him in terms of his game is, at his size, what is his speed like when he's running through trash, when he's getting to the line of scrimmage? There's not a lot of room to move. Can he cut? Can he keep his feet up? Can he keep his knees up? I'm just afraid of a potential where he's essentially like Alex Ross, where if there's a straight line, boom, he's gone. But that's not how football's played. Not a lot of cutting ability, not a lot of agility in Alex Ross's game. And until we get to see Jonathan Hatton play, that's just one question I have about him. If he passes that question with flying colors, shut it down. Even if Xavier Robinson is healthy all year, I can see a scenario whereby Texas, a handful of weeks into the season, if Jonathan Hatton is even half of what people are hyping him up to be, and I'll count myself as one of the people that's hyping him up, if he's half as good as that can be a guy that can start as a true freshman in this offense at a place like OU, no question.
I think it's really interesting. We're going to see, because hey, I want Jonathan Hatton to be great. I mean, it sounds, all reviews so far have been kind of overwhelmingly positive about him. But then I look at it and I'm just like, well, this guy wasn't, he's a blue chip guy, but he's kind of he's like a fringe top 100 guy in the country. And I do think it's interesting. There are 3 running backs who are ahead of him in this past recruiting cycle's composite rankings. And OU is going to play 2 of those guys this year. That's Savion Hyder at Michigan, who is the number 1 running back in the country in that class. And then KJ Edwards at Texas A&M. Is right ahead of Hatton. I'm kind of curious. I think it'll be, especially if we see both of those guys, I think it's going to be interesting to compare and contrast between those guys and Hatton. It's why, from everything I've heard from OU people about Hatton, it's why wasn't this guy the number 1 running back in the country? I think that's worth asking, but also I don't, I'm not really sure either. So we're going to see in 3 weeks. We're going to see, and I've read some Michigan stuff, and this Hyder guy looks like he's definitely going to get some run for them. And so I'm curious to see if we're going to be able to compare and contrast those guys.
Yeah, I mean, with recruiting,
go ahead, Grant.
Go. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Grant. Let's. Oh, I was gonna pivot, and I was gonna start talking about the position that actually can deliver you a national championship, the wide receivers. But did you have any other leftover thoughts? Oh, we lost Brady. Uh-oh.
I'm here. I'm here.
Is he there?
We got him. Yeah, he's there.
We got him. Oh, he's there. Okay, yeah. Your face went away on my end. Anyway, okay. Well, we can pivot then. So, Brady, what do you make of the buzz surrounding the wide receivers, especially one Elijah Thomas that has come out in the last couple of weeks? As I have said on this, I think OU desperately needs another guy that they can pair with an Isaiah Satania, a guy who defenses are scared of and have to game plan around. Kind of sounds like Elijah Thomas is making a lot of big plays. What do you make of it?
So I kind of said this earlier about, hey, sometimes it takes guys a year or so to, the light bulb to come on, and it's okay if a guy isn't awesome in their first year. That's fine. And hopefully for Elijah Thomas, that's the case, because he looks the part. Can he play the part? That's kind of the question for him. And Emmett Jones talked about this in terms of him coming from a smaller school in a high school in Oklahoma and kind of just having a maybe not like a culture shock, but something similar to that, where you are suddenly not the best player on your team. You are not the do it all player. You're surrounded by dudes now, whether they be starters that you're going up against as a wide receiver in practice, or if they're backups trying to crack the depth chart. Like, those dudes would be awesome if you played with them in high school. Like, that's just the step up in competition you see when you go to a place like OU. And for some players, it's hard to kind of put it all together in the first year when that's kind of your new experience. But even still, like, we saw him showcase his athletic ability on special teams. So while it might have been hard for him to crack the rotation as a wide receiver on the offense, he was able to get onto the field at special teams, and that's not really anything to kind of look at and go, not too important. So I want to believe that Elijah Thomas can be a thing. I want to believe that Manny Choice can be a thing as well. I think that their physical makeups add something to the receiver room that they just simply don't have. I mean, Parker Livingstone is he's a tall receiver, a tall possession guy that has shown an ability to do it at this level in the SEC. But you need more guys outside of just him, because even in the spring, Parker Livingston showed this little, I'm healthy, I'm kind of injured, I'm banged up, I'm going to sit out this practice. So you hope that that's not the case in fall, but you want to have more guys. And then I'd add to Elijah and Manny for young receivers. I mean, I'd add Jashir Rogers to that list as well. Of OU has a plethora of dudes that seem like they belong at a place like OU, like from a physical makeup standpoint, from an ability standpoint with Jashir Rogers, because you look at him and you're just like, yeah, that's a true freshman. Then you watch him run drills, you watch him in the spring game and go, that guy's been in college for 2 or 3 years, right? Oh, he's 18 years old. And he's from Delaware or something like that. It's like, whoa, okay. That guy's a baller though. And the coaching staff tends to agree because they put him out at punt return behind Peyton Bowen. So they seem to agree that he needs the ball in his hands. So I want to believe with Elijah Thomas, but because we know Ben Arbuckle, Emmett Jones, based off of last year, they don't really like to dip into their into the pocket with the wide receivers until they prove otherwise. That's just kind of what we have to believe. And if that be the case, then it's Isaiah, Parker Livingston, Trell Harris until further notice. But again, want to believe that it's a thing, because if so, then like Brent Venables said, for OU to be who they want to be, Elijah Thomas and Manny Choice got to be dudes, not just forgotten freshmen from a year ago.
Yep, I totally agree. They gotta. If they really, really want to take a huge step, to me, it's obviously a vastly improved running game is going to help all of this stuff. But the thing that will help the most are dudes out wide at wide receiver. I think that is going to be, that would help them take the biggest step to becoming the team that they want to be. So, I have zero preference for who emerges after those top 3 that you said. I don't care. I'll love up on whoever it is. So, we'll see though. So Brady, I mean, it's definitely nice to hear the talk about Elijah Thomas.
Think about back to before August started, and you hadn't been going outside every single day, seemingly in 100+ degree weather, to wait to talk to college kids. And fall camp hadn't, the pads hadn't come on yet. What's something that you've learned about Oklahoma's offense since the start of fall camp that maybe you did not know about the offense before?
Well, something I know, I mean, I don't 100% know this because we've not seen them play against UTEP yet, or of course Michigan and then later on, but I know this now. Hayden Hansen is either setting himself up to be probably the most hated player on this roster, or he's setting himself up to be one of the most pivotal, impactful signings out of the portal in the Brent Venables era, because back in spring, he had the golden quote of well, guess what? The running back or the running game is back or something like that. And he just said it with the biggest smile that you could ever have on his face. And it's just dude, you are setting yourself up for failure if they only average 3.2 yards per carry or something like that. But he has been adamant about how important It's been for them to not just bring in these tight ends, not just to bring in Jason Witten, but to actually put words to action in terms of Brent Venables saying the running game has been pathetic the last few years, and it absolutely has been pathetic. It cannot be the case in 2026 if they want to win a lot of games, get back to the playoff. Hayden Hansen talking about how, hey, like when I was in the portal, I didn't really see myself in OU's offense just based on what I saw on tape from last year, and it took some convincing. And that kind of told me that they really want to have multiple tight ends out there to help out the running game. And I know Grant's going to have an opinion on that, but if they need to have extra guys out there to help block and to help open up holes for the running backs, then so be it. As long as it's successful, then so be it. That's something that I feel much more confident in, that it's actually come to pass, the improvement, the onus of like getting the running game back up and running. And that's on the offensive line getting better. And yeah, it sucks to have Jake Maikkula out for the next few weeks, but you still feel good about Fasusi, Eddie Pierre-Louis, and Marion Harris, the Arkansas transfer, Heath Ozida, if he needs to come out and play as a result of guys getting shuffled around. There's a lot of experience. There's a lot of physical ability on that offensive line that, okay, like the run blocking should improve. You brought in Hayden Hansen. You brought in Jack Van Dorselaer. These are guys that are proven awesome blocking tight ends at the SEC level. And then you just have a Deland McCullough, like an adult coaching the running backs, a guy who knows how to get great production out of his running backs, whether they be studs, whether they be just jags. Like, hey, I can get 4 yards of carry out of anybody. That means something to me. So yes, I don't know it 1,000% true because we've not seen them play, but they've talked about it so much that I can't help but like, okay, like I'll believe it until it just gets proved. If this be the case, I'll believe it until it's been proven that this was all just fluff.
You're going to give him the benefit of the doubt, huh? Until you see. I'm still. I know you're not really, but it's like
I mean,
yeah, it sounds great, but I don't know if I buy it until I actually see it play out on the field.
I mean, football isn't something you can just copy and paste. It's not like fantasy sports where you just take stats, production, put it on your team, and that's what you suddenly get. So Hayden Hansen has to prove that he can do it in this offense. Deland McCullough has to prove that he can do it on this team with this talent. This offensive line needs to prove that they have taken that step in terms of just the run blocking expertise. They have to prove it. But these are all things that tend to like just naturally or organically happen. Like Hayden Hansen's a great blocking tight end. He can be a great blocking tight end at Florida, at OU, on the moon. Like that should translate. Offensive linemen tend to organically get better and stronger with more experience. Like that tends to happen. And Deland McCullough is a constant. He is just an awesome running back coach who produces great running back rooms wherever he is. So all these things should translate and coincide with together. But you're right. Like until we see it, it is just a bunch of talk.
I'd be much more inclined to give the benefit of the doubt if they truly are, if like the intent is in the offseason that, hey, we're going to go to 12 personnel, and that means we're effectively scrapping the RPO, and we are coming out and we're going to try to fire off the ball. We're going to see, and because we feel that this fits our personnel better, I'd be much more inclined to believe that. But I'm more along with Lee. I got to see it first.
I mean, did you guys hear did you guys hear my co-host on Through the Keyhole? And again, it's a spring game. I get it. A few weeks ago, he did mention, or he reiterated, because we talked about this after the spring game, where Peyton went to the game and charted how many times they ran 12 personnel, and he said that it was 90% of the time. It is a spring game. I do think that that's important. I do think that it's. I don't know why you would do that if you weren't trying.
Wait, hold on. How often?
90%.
What was the number?
He said 90%.
90%?
Yeah,
Wow.
I guess of all the snaps that OU's offenses had in the spring game, 90% of them came with two tight ends.
When you were editing your footage and going back, did you kind of look for that? Did you count that seemed about right? Did you even focus on that? Probably.
Yeah, I saw. I mean, because again, Jack Van Dorselaer wasn't healthy in that game, so he wasn't playing, if I remember correctly. But Rocky and Hayden were out there quite a bit together at the same time. And then and that was with John Mateer as quarterback. So like your quote unquote ones that were healthy enough to play in the spring game, they were out there together. And then like the Tyler Ruxer kid, he was out there with, and his name's escaping me, Cade McIntyre. Is that a tight end that still exists for OU?
Yes.
Yeah, they were out there
they
paired
have
together.
Washington too.
Yeah, they were out there. Yeah, Trinae Washington as well. They were out there usually paired together with either the Bo Bentley or the Witten Neubauer experience.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's, wow, 90%. Okay, so same question about the offense, but on the defense. Something that you didn't know about Oklahoma's defense a few weeks ago before camp started that you have come to learn. And I mean, there's some option, I know that, but what stands out to you?
Well, this was more of a healthy question because it's a question by default. Until they prove that to have guys behind David and Jaden, like it's a question that they have to answer. But it's a healthy concern because it's Brent Venables and Todd Bates. Like they're more than likely going to find whoever they think is worthy. They're probably good. It's just like Lincoln Riley busting in a new quarterback that you've never heard of. He's probably good because Lincoln Riley knows quarterbacks and he makes his offenses work with any quarterback almost. So it's a healthy concern. I was not prepared for Tank Carrington. I was not prepared for that kind of those kind of adjectives thrown at him. I was not prepared for the hype that he has had or received consistently from Jaden Jackson, from David Stone, from Brent Venables, from Nigel Smith. I expected it to be Nigel Smith, Trent Wilson, with some Bishop Thomas kind of thrown in there, based off of his experience and his age, really. Like those are your reserve linemen. I feel much better about Trent Wilson just based on watching him at practice. That guy has power and speed. He looks like a Todd Bates defensive lineman. Nigel Smith still has a little bit of a hill to climb because he did come to OU as a defensive end. He's gained the good defensive lineman weight that you want. He's a 300-pounder. He plays like it. But at the same time, nobody has received like special descriptors like Tank Carrington from guys that if Brent Venables and David Stone and Jade Jackson are saying like he's special, then I am like, yes, I agree with you. I've never seen him play at this level, but why would I disagree with you? Because like Lee, you know this, anytime you talk to players about their teammates, they're always going to say like glowing review, like great compliments, but they're often, sometimes you can kind of cut to this is truth. And it's when a player goes all in on the compliments. And it's not just, oh, he's a great guy and he works hard. It's like, those are like, yeah, like those are cookie cutter quotes. But everything said about Tank Carrington just gives me this impression that he's not just going to be in the rotation. He may very well be the third guy behind David and Jaden for all we know, based on what we've heard. And he probably won't be just because Trent and Nigel are older than him. And while Tank is extremely strong, he is still like a sub 300-pounder. He's like 295. He gained 40 or 45 pounds during the summer, which is insane. It puts him on track to be like a freak of an athlete. If you just project him a few years into college, just by virtue of that. So, but I do think that once Tank gets onto the field, once he gets some snaps under his belt, some experience under his belt, I would not be shocked if by midseason he's like the guy behind David and Jaden. And just judging by what everyone has said about him, I think that's something that OU fans should be excited about.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you on the Tank Carrington hype. That's one area where it's like if it's a Todd Bates guy and people are already saying that he's really good, I believe him because I think everybody who has come through that room in the first 4 seasons has, even if they're not NFL guys, has improved pretty greatly. So, all right, now to the showstopping stuff, Brady. Brent Venables' new contract. The floor is yours. What do you think?
Well, just to peek behind the curtain, when I saw the news drop, I did not share it with my Sooners on SI group chat first. I shared it with you guys because I knew that the conversations would be a lot more fun with you guys. Look, I understand the last time that this happened, 6 and 7 followed, 2024 followed. I understand. I do think that while 2026 is a gigantic season for this program, it's even more gigantic for Brent Venables because OU is going to be OU forever. Like, they've been a blue blood for 70, 80, 90 years of greatness. That will more than likely continue. And before you say, hey, like, NIL and money and like, look at all these programs with money, it's like that has happened throughout college football. SMU had like a fun stint in the 80s and with the money, and then they go away. And then Baylor in the 2010s, like whenever the OUs, the Texases, whenever those teams start to falter, that's where like all these other like lesser quote unquote programs can kind of rise and find a little niche, but that doesn't last. What lasts is greatness, and OU is in that category. So OU is going to be fine. Maybe not. If it doesn't work out with Brent, maybe it takes them a while, but they'll eventually get back on track because that's what's happened throughout time. But 2026 is a gigantic year for Brent Venables. At the same time, we can't keep moving the goalposts with him because he did get to the playoff last year. He did win 10 games with that schedule, and he navigated that season with a quarterback with a broken wing. And if we went back in time and told our offseason selves going into 2025, hey, John Mateer is going to get hurt in the fourth game of the year, he's going to be a shell of himself the rest of the year, OU's still going to win 10 games and make the playoff, we'd have been like, what? Like, bravo, Brent Venables. And I don't want to take that and then look at this contract extension just because the last time this happened, OU sucked the following season. I don't want to just sit there and say, okay, well, everything you did great last year just doesn't matter anymore. Like, you have to be great. And I'll say this, though. I've been like, on Keyhole, I said that they should go 10-2 this season. The schedule's hard, but this is OU. Like, win games. That's what you sign up to do. But I was willing to at least say if they go 9-3 because like Georgia is a title contender, Texas is a title contender, Ole Miss, A&M are playoff contenders, and they just end up losing to three teams that happen to be slightly better than them, then unfortunately them's be the breaks. I am less inclined now because of the contract extension to just kind of give them a little bit of an olive branch in the event that they don't hit a goal, because it's like, all right, if you're going to get paid like a top 7 coach in the country, Brent Venables, then you need to produce like it. And how many who are the coaches that are paid more than him? Like, do you guys know off the top of your head?
Yeah, we talked about it before you came on. So it's tough because you know this, but USA Today puts out their list, and the most updated list I could find from USA Today was October of last year. So it's behind, and so I was able to find a list that Yahoo put together that has some updated numbers. And so Venables, according to this, is now 10th in the nation, highest paid. So he just barely cracks the top 10, and he's 5th in the SEC. And so here are the coaches that are paid more than him, the top 9 coaches. Kirby Smart at 13.1, 13.3. There's been some conflicting reports. Signetti at 13. Then you got Lane at 13, now at LSU. Ryan Day's at 12.6. DeBoer at Alabama's at 12.5. Lincoln's at 11.5 at USC. You got Dabo at 11.4 at Clemson. Sark's at 11.1. Mike Elko at 10.8 is right above Venables, now at 10.5, and that's reportedly according to Thamel. So that's your top 10 right there from the latest information I could find from Yahoo.
Yeah, I'm kind of okay with it. Some of those numbers, because again, like, this is not a top 10 coaching list based off of what they've done. A&M is always going to be able to pay their coach an outlandish amount of money because they're A&M. They have a ton of money, and sometimes they have to pay that money to get them to want to come to. Because even though you can recruit well at A&M has not consistently been a winner ever. So they have to kind of pony up at times. And whoever is trying to be a coach, and A&M is like in the pool of schools that they could coach at, they know that they have money. So there's A&M's usually behind it in a negotiation standpoint, in my opinion. At the same time, it's just hard to know that, Brent Venables is Bob Stoops was a top 5, top 7 paid coach during his tenure, and he won like it, from a raw game win-loss standpoint, conference championships, the national championship in 2000, like he earned it. Lincoln Riley, I guess from a win-loss standpoint, also earned it. Conference championship, he earned it. I get it. Brent he's 32-20. It looks bad. I do put a lot of stock in last year, though. And I tend to think, and I told you guys this when we were having our back and forth on our group chat, I tend to think that they're going to be good this year. I did not think that they were going to be particularly good in 2024. In fact, I remember saying on Keyhole that this will be like the 2024 season. This will be one of the few times in OU football history where an 8-4 season would be applauded because the schedule is hard. This is their first year in the SEC. There is just no blueprint for switching conferences to the best conference in America. Like OU has never done that before. And so it's just really hard to project what's going to happen. So based off of that, with a green offensive line, with a new starter at quarterback in Jackson Arnold, with a defense that hadn't proven to be getting to be elite yet, they were still developing. All that said, I was like, yeah, they should go 8-4, and that would be a hell of an accomplishment. And they did not go 8-4. And fortunately, they had a gigantic reason for that. And Brent did play a part in that reasoning. He hired possibly the worst offensive coordinator in school history in Seth Luttrell. They had Jackson Arnold, who cannot count and is not a very good quarterback at the college level. And sometimes you'll bust at the quarterback spot, and that it's really hard to come back from. Brent did learn from his mistakes and seemed to develop as a coach, took the responsibility himself. I think that that's a good thing and means a lot. And then it yielded a 10-3 or 10-2, 10-3 overall season and a playoff appearance. I think that really means something. So I just want to try to remember the frame of mind that I had the last time he got a contract extension. I did not expect greatness in 2024, and they did not sniff it whatsoever. They didn't even sniff my projection. But at the same time, I did not expect them to be awesome. This year, I expect them to be awesome. And this contract extension just kind of yeah, that's what, if they're as awesome as I think they should be, then this would be par for the course. So my mind is already there, even though we've not seen them play it down yet.
So the way that I think about what happened 2 years ago is, and this is why, so I very obviously don't think, well, because they did this 2 years ago and then it was followed up by the worst season this century, that means that exact same thing is going to happen this year. No, I mean, I don't believe that. That's an error, I think. What does concern me, and Brady, I remember what you were saying before the 24th. That is what you were saying before that season, and I disagreed with you at the time. I had very high expectations for that season because it was year 3 under Brent Venables. There's a lot of historical precedent of year 3 should kind of be the year. If you got a new coach, if you're a National League program, that's when you're supposed to be really good. Instead, it was the worst team that we've had this century. What concerns me, the reason why I connect those things now, is because I think there has been a lot of revisionism around that contract extension 2 years ago, not from you, Brady, but from a lot of other people, kind of saying, and a lot of people attributing the reason they gave him that extension 2 years ago with kind of the exact same reasoning they just gave it to him a few days ago, in the sense that this is a bid for stability. It's a messaging thing for recruits, maybe because they knew that they were going to have a difficult season coming up. I just don't think that that's true at all. I think that they gave him that extension 2 years ago because behind the scenes, they saw the same things they're seeing now, and they're like, we got a stud as a head coach right now. And I think they were caught totally flat-footed 2 years ago that they were that bad. I think the coaching staff had no idea they were going to be that bad. I don't think the administration had any idea they were going to be that bad. And so the reason why I connect those things is because is there a failure of judgment behind the scenes there, where they are seeing something that they want to see and not actually seeing what is in front of them? That's what I'm concerned about. And so we'll see. And I thought they had a good season last year. I'm glad that they made the playoff. I thought coming off of the worst season they've had in 26 years, that was a really, really very positive step in the right direction. Is Oklahoma about just making the playoffs, though? Is that what it's about? And then the question I would have for the administration is, in their eyes, when does it become reasonable to expect more than that? Because you even bring up this thing, if they were to lose, and I know that you said that this new contract extension makes you changes the calculus of how you're thinking about that. But if they lose to 3 other teams that are like potentially national title good and they go 9-3, my question as a fan to the administration would be, when is it reasonable for me to expect OU to be one of those national title contending teams?
Yeah. Well, I to that, your last question, I would just ask, well, do you expect OU to be a national title contender this year? Like, and just take the schedule out of it.
I do.
Like, based on their talent. So based on, like, you had all these questions about wide receiver. We have questions about defensive depth. We have questions about John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle. And yet you expect them to be a national title contender?
OU is OU. This is year 5 of Brent Venables. They better be.
Well, I mean, you could pick year 8 of Bob Stoops, and what would that have been? 2007, technically. So Sam's first year,
they were they were the best team in the country that year.
Well,
so,
sure,
yeah,
like once they started playing games, but I don't remember going into that year with, hey, you're going to have Sam Bradford or Keith Nickel at quarterback, like a brand new guy. Like I don't remember them getting a lot of national title hype. Now, you're OU, you should be in the conversation at least every year, but the national championship expectations at a program like OU, that's like an overall blanket statement, but then there is the nuance of, well, each year is different and you have a different level or array of talent, and that kind of suggests your specific standard for that particular season. This year, if you told me they win a national championship, that would be extremely surprising. And yet I still have them going 10-2 and making the playoff. Like, I just don't think that they've answered enough questions based on what we've seen out of John Mateer, Ben Arbuckle, this offensive line, a lack of a running game. There are so many questions so that I don't hold them to this specific season, national title or bust. But you're right. Historically, like year 5, Brent Venables, like head coach at OU, like there should be expectations. But again, I'll just remind you, Bob didn't switch conferences. He did not switch conferences to the best conference in America where you're playing 3 or 4, sometimes 5 awesome teams. Like Barry Switzer only had to play Nebraska in most of his schedules, where that's the one team that matches you. Oklahoma State sucked. Kansas State was the worst program in college football forever. Like the Big 8 was not a very strong conference. All you had to do was beat Nebraska, win the rest of your crappy games, and you're right in the Orange Bowl. So it's different. The landscape is different. To an overall question that you might have had, well, is the expectation different at OU? No, it's not. But it's a different landscape now. I'm not going to sit here and say like hang a banner just by making the playoff. No, but in order to get to the national championship, you have to make the playoff. So it's all a moot point if they don't make the playoff. If they won 9 or 10 games, missed the playoff, but then won a New Year's Six bowl, like, okay, good season, but that doesn't meet the standard whatsoever because this is a championship program and you didn't even make the field to potentially win one in the first place. So, I mean, I get it. I get the concerns and I get the kind of having like a rigid viewpoint of what OU should be, but there are realities. Sometimes OU will play teams that are just structured better than they are in a particular season. It doesn't mean that, okay, that's it. OU is no longer a national title school. It just means that in that particular season, OU had a brand new quarterback, or they were busting out a new offensive line, or they lost a lot of talent from the year prior, and that's just the DNA of the sport. Sometimes you're lucky and sometimes you're not.
And I guess my point is not to say that everything should be national title or bust. It's not like the 2024 Ohio State team, which very obviously had the best roster in the entire sport, where it's like that's obviously a national title or bust type deal. It's just the thing that concerns me is that I feel like I am seeing the early stages of OU's greater expectations totally shift right before our eyes. And it's not necessarily of you should compete for the national title every year. It's more of if things go right in a given season, they should be right there every single season.
Yeah.
And I guess the whole bit with, and I get the SEC is a lot harder. It's a big step up from where they were in the Big 12, but I don't necessarily think that means that OU has to go through like a rough period or a period where you kind of temper the expectations. Texas A&M had their best team in program history the first year they went from the Big 12 to the SEC. Missouri played in 2 consecutive SEC championship games in years 2 and 3 in the SEC. And I know that's a different time and there was the division structure and everything. But if you're good, you're good. And that, I think, and you and I had a bit of a back and forth earlier this week too. And it's like, I don't accept Ole Miss being a better program than Oklahoma in any scenario. Sure, maybe like in a one-off thing, it's like, yeah, this is Ole Miss's best team ever. So and sometimes that's not going to be Oklahoma that year.
And I would argue that we just experienced that little period of time. This is Ole Miss. I mean, I know Ole Miss technically won a national title in 1969, but you ask any Ole Miss fan, like the Lane Kiffin experience was like the most fun that they've had as a program or as a fan base, and then also like Trinidad Chambliss is probably the best quarterback in the country and played like it last year.
Yeah, he's awesome,
and like that can happen. Like that's the thing about playing in the SEC. Like, I am never going to excuse losses, or if OU like makes mistakes and they lose a game that they shouldn't. I mean, they should have won the Ole Miss game, but they had 3 mistakes that ended up resulting in them losing the game. But I will admit, losing to Ole Miss or losing to Alabama is much easier to stomach than it is watching Baker Mayfield lose to Iowa State in Norman, or watching OU lose to, I mean, Kansas State's a solid program since the 90s, but still watching OU lose to teams like that, that's where you learn nothing as a team, as a program, from losing to teams you have no business losing to. Like, you have more talent than them. What the hell was that? When you lose to Alabama or Ole Miss, the alternative is this is either who we are or we can get better, because it forces you to get better. Like, the SEC shines a light on your flaws. If you suck at something, you cannot get away with it like you could get away with it in the Big 12. In a weird alternate timeline, imagine if OU was still in the Big 12 in 2024. They might have won 8 games. They might have.
I don't think so. Well, I thought that team was just bad.
They were bad. Seth Luttrell might not get fired. Like, the whole point is they have an easier schedule. They might be able to win a game or two. Hell, they played Ole Miss tough in the fourth quarter on the road. That terrible team. They beat Alabama and Norman. Like, they were capable of random good performances. But the overall point is, in 2024, if they're still in the Big 12, there's not as a bright of a light shining on their flaws that Brent Venables then had to reckon with and was forced to get better at, either himself as an individual coach or him as a leader of a program. Those things occurred, and then 2025 happens and they make the playoffs. So I'm putting a lot of stock in that. So if you think that they're good enough to win a national championship or compete for one, Grant, then if that's what comes to pass, you should be fine with this contract extension. It's just, I get the optics and the timing are kind of like, oh God, this happened before and it wasn't pretty at what happened after.
So yeah, let's jump on that. To me, like the main issue is just why now? That's the issue with me. Like, we'll find out that this will look good, this will look bad. Time will tell. It just doesn't see. And I don't even. Yeah, the previous history is just, it adds to the ridiculous 6-7, 10-3, 6-7, 10-3. Apparently, when Brent Venables gets a contract at Oklahoma, you're going to get 6-7, then 10-3, then a contract, 6-7, 10-3. Oh, now another contract. So it's just like, if they end up going 6-7 again, then like we all should have played the lottery this year or something, or I don't know. But just the timing of it is the issue for me. And if Oklahoma does hit this year and is excellent again, we talked about this before you got on, Brady, and you got to re-up Venables next year at this time or in the summer and pay him more money, who cares? So what? He's earned it. Go show me you can actually win. Like, all the stuff preseason, off-season that you're doing to improve upon that you've hit on, Brady. Roger Denny said that he doesn't have to see this season to know that everything, they got their guy. Like, I'd like to see this season.
That sucked. So that was Roger Denny was not good in that press conference.
So there's that. But let's give here's like the benefit of the doubt. Like, maybe this is the glass half full look at it from my perspective. It's like, okay, do you know what you're going to get out of Brent Venables? You know you're going to get an elite defensive team. He's going to bring you great defense. Okay, maybe the calculus is defense is really hard to put together. Really, it's difficult to recruit awesome interior defensive linemen. And it is, and Oklahoma's been awesome at that. How long is Venables going to be able to retain Todd Bates? I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, who knows if Todd Bates wants to become a defensive coordinator or a head coach himself? I don't know. Maybe that's a huge part of it. So maybe that's the calculus. Defense, we got that. And with Jim Nagy and Brent Venables just learning more and more as a head coach and learning over time, maybe we're confident that we're going to be able to figure out how to put together a great offense consistently year to year. Is that the calculus? You got defense figured out? We're confident that we've seen enough from Brent Venables and Jim Nagy and that front office staff that we're going to be able to figure out a great offense and make that consistent down the line. What do you think, Brady?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the overall sentiment that you'd feel a lot better if Brent Venables had just simply proven more. And, we've had our own back and forth, like on each of our podcasts about like they should have gone 8-4 in his first year. And my point would be like, well, okay, they're 34-18 under Brent Venables. Does that make everybody feel better? I mean, whatever. But overall, yes, you would feel better if Brent had won a Big 12 title with these contract extensions. You would feel better if they had reached an SEC championship game or won 9 games in year 1 in the SEC. You'd feel a lot better. At the same time, though, I guess it just is what it is. And I guess to the timing aspect, I mean, these talks have been going on since the season ended in 2025. If the extension got announced in April, would anybody care? I mean, I know national people would care.
Yeah.
And I know Texas.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Care in what way?
Me, I'd have the exact same thoughts as I do right now.
Exact same spots. Like what he's not even halfway through his previous contract. There's no urgency to get a deal done. That's the issue.
And like the last season was a good season. Like I was happy with last season when, not happy with how it ended, but in the grand scheme of things, I was happy with last season. Brent Venables in his tenure at Oklahoma has been a mediocre head coach for the University of Oklahoma. And he's gotten extended twice. Like, so that I would have felt the exact same way.
Not to pat myself on the back, but when Brent was hired, I predicted that he's either Gary Gibbs or Chuck Fairbanks. And just like trying to find a historical precedent. If he's Chuck Fairbanks, it had more to do with, it's because he's older. Like he's not going to be coaching for 16 to 20 years like Bob did, right? Like he's older in his tenure as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe but
he presents like a 30-year-old.
Yeah, he is not hurting for energy whatsoever. But just in terms of numerical age, it's like, yeah, he might be, if he ends up being great, he might be Chuck Fairbanks, because I don't know how long he'll be the head coach at a place like OU, but he'll set up the program to be a juggernaut that whoever takes over after him, like I'll be like, ideally like a younger coach, will then be like set. That's kind of the idea. Or he's Gary Gibbs, where Gary Gibbs had 2 seasons that were considered good. I think really there was only 1 season that was probably good. But Gary was dealing with scholarship limitations when that was an actual detriment to program building. Bowl bans, TV bans, when that was still very important for building your program, is just to simply be on TV or to have like the ability to play in a bowl game as an advertisement to recruits. Like, hey, we can go to bowl games. So he had some uphill battles to climb. But overall, of course, Gary Gibbs is kind of the coach that introduced the 90s, like the dark ages of OU football. And so that's kind of the fork in the road that we find ourselves in 2026, where we will find out, like, is Brent Chuck Fairbanks, which I know people would hopefully want him to be better than that. But Chuck did build, national title worthy teams. They just had to play Nebraska, like greatest of all time team in 1971, like that. Sometimes them's just the breaks. But is he going to be that? Or if they fail and fall on their face this season, it's like, yeah, like it's a bad look with the contract extension. This will be something that could haunt the program for 5 to 10 years like it did in the 90s. That's what we find ourselves in. But again, like, it just really kind of comes down to your personal opinion, because we've not seen them play this year. If you think that they are destined to be bad, then yeah, this is an awful look and an awful move by the program. If you think that they're supposed to be good like I think that they should be, then yeah, this is kind of just par for the course. And I guess to the leadership standpoint of them being kind of blind to what's going on, well, I mean, Joe Castiglione is the one who gave Brent the bad extension. Roger Denny, he's only been the athletic director for 5 or 6 months. And I think people that have a negative opinion on him are the same silly people that are giving him praise for winning a baseball national championship under his belt. It's like, I mean, okay. It's like blaming a president. And generally speaking, I'm just saying this generally, it's like traditionally blaming or praising a president for a good or a bad economy. Sometimes they just inherit the thing. It has nothing to do with what they're doing. That's a traditional take, not a current modern day politics thing or take. Traditionally, it's weird to have takes like that. But I mean, I don't know. I think they're going to go 10-2. Therefore, I think the contract extension is fine.
But I guess and this is like a question that I would ask basically every OU fan who is kind of plugged in and feels strongly or has opinions about such things. What's your eject button with Brent Venables look like? This is what I want because my biggest fear is we get to year 8 or year 9 and they still haven't won anything of consequence. Everyone still talks about how great the culture is. They're still recruiting well, but yet they still haven't won at a very, very high level. What do people want? Or what would finally tell you, say, okay, we need to move on from Brent Venables?
I answer your question with a question. At what point did you have an eject button with Bob Stoops? If you ever did you have one?
I never really had to think about it because they were never as bad as they have been under Brent Venables at times.
Well, I mean, that national championship,
every time they had a bad season, it was followed up with 4 or 5 great seasons,
which is what Brent has done. I mean, well, not 4 or 5 in a row, but he has followed up bad season with good season thus far. I asked that question because what you're describing is how I remember the Bob Stoops era in the 2010s, where they were good, they were recruiting well, the culture was great, but they would routinely lose to teams that, Kansas State happens to be good this year and they beat OU, or Oklahoma State has the best team in program history and then they just get destroyed in Stillwater. That was the program. But you can sit there and say, but he won the national championship in 2000. And it's like, how much legwork is that title doing from 10, 15 years ago? Like it kind of comes down to that. With Brent, what's his eject button? I mean, the eject button is time and time again, OU proves to just not be as good as the teams that they are like they kind of see themselves with. Like, that's why, like, this year is so weird because 10-2 would be great. If one of those 2 losses is Texas, man, like, it would be really hard to not see that record against Texas, because there's like Chuck Fairbanks was a coach that had like a 1-4 or 1-5 record against Texas, and then he won like I think the last 2 and had a quote unquote respectable record against them. There's not a lot of examples of like coaches at OU that have such a poor record and frankly a poor showing against Texas like Brent potentially could have. And the sad fact is Texas is really good this year. They could very well be a national title contender. And it's like, well, you lost to a national title contender, but it's like, man, it looks worse because it's A, Texas, and B, like, look at these games you have coached against them in the last 4 or 5 years. It's not good. So this year is huge. If they lose to, let's say that Georgia, Texas, and A&M, let's say that those 3 teams are legitimate playoff national title contenders. And then let's say Michigan and Ole Miss are just good teams. OU beats those good teams, but they lose to those 3 national title contenders. That to me would be like a Bob Stoops year in 2011 or 2012, where they would play nobody. They'd play 2 or 3 teams that were actually good, and they would lose to them. And so the message I would receive at the time was, OU's good. They're not good enough. They're not good enough to beat these teams that they're actually trying to compete for a Big 12 title or a national title. They can't beat them. That's a problem. That would be a problem this year. But again, I've said 2026 is huge for Brent Venables, so that's par for the course for me. I just tend to think that they should be good. They should win 10 games. So I think that there's no need to hit an eject button, but they could prove me wrong because I've been proven wrong before, unfortunately.
I'm going to ask you 2 more questions, and then we can shelve this. Let me ask these follow-ups here. This is really interesting.
But
okay, I just said, what if they go 6-6 this year?
Yeah,
this is to Brady.
Well, I mean, after 2024, I was very careful with what I was saying. I thought, yeah, typically at any other school, if a coach goes 6-6 like they did, especially for a second time in that coach's tenure, that guy probably gets fired. And then at a place like OU, you cannot go 6-7 twice in 3 years like Brent had done. Like, you just can't. Did I want Brent fired? Not really, because I understand why people like him. Like, I want him to succeed. And it's not just because he's the head coach at OU. It's because I understand why people would die for him. It's kind of the same thing with Switzer. Like, I understand why his players are just like, Barry Switzer is like a second father to me. Like, I get that. There are times where I'm like, I'll see like a Bob Stoops like locker room speech and just go, he's an accomplished winner. So I get it. But the emotional, like visceral part of me is just like, I get that with Brent Venables. So I understand why people want him to work. But if he goes 6-6 again, hit the eject button. But here's the thing, Grant, like, I don't think that they will.
And the thing is, I think pretty much everyone, maybe not you, but I think everyone 2 years ago was pretty stunned they were as bad as they were. And I don't think they're going to go 6-6 this year either. But what if they go 32-20 over the next 4 seasons again? Do you hit the eject button?
Well, I mean, I guess if they go 32-20, there could be a year where they win a lot, like all their games. They could just, what if they go undefeated one year, and that means I guess they lose a lot of games in the other seasons. But I mean,
do they win a national championship? During this 32-20 stretch? Here's the thing. If you got something, Brady,
I was just going to say, I was just going to say, like, I've got questions about Indiana and Curt Cignetti, and I'm with you guys. Like, he's the best coach in America. But, I mean, sometimes the best coach in America can lose a lot of talent and not succeed at the same level the next year. Like, it's a huge hurdle to overcome, losing that amount of experience and talent that knows how to play under you. Like, and now Indiana and Cignetti have a target on their back. Like, that is something Indiana as a program has just never experienced. And frankly, I don't think Curt Cignetti has ever experienced. They have been the one chasing. How do you perform when you are the target? I mean, we saw that with Bob Stoops in his tenure, where for the most part they were great at it. But when you are routinely everybody's homecoming game or the biggest game on the schedule, like, it's going to be a night game in Lubbock, it's going to be a night game in Lawrence or Manhattan, it's like that can bite you in the ass every once in a while. And so, like, I've got questions about Cignetti. So it is what it is.
So to go back to Brady's question, the Bob Stoops eject button. For me, the eject button was following the 2014 season when they lost that Russell Athletic Bowl. That was the time when it was like, okay, this is not working. And to Bob Stoops' credit, they hired Lincoln Riley and Baker Mayfield came in, and they were excellent the next couple of years, and then he retired before 2017. So there's my eject button. But when it comes to Venables, I think my eject button is simply the offense continues to be bad. That's the one thing he's not good at. Everything else he's great at. Like, when they're winning games, the recruiting's excellent. The defense has obviously been terrific. If in 2026, a lot of things are set up for the offense to obviously improve. They have a returning quarterback. You hope he stays healthy. They got a new tight ends coach, a new running backs coach. The offensive coordinator is going into his second year in the SEC. You think maybe he's changing up. We'll find out how much Arbuckle's his strategy and his scheme has changed, if any. If the offense improves just slightly in 2026, that's a problem. That is a huge problem. If it's the same and they finish, ranked in the 90s or 80s total offense, and then the SP Plus, they're like in the 50s again, like that's a problem. If it gets worse somehow this year, that's the eject button. That is the eject button, but they can't. They just re-signed him. So that's why, and like, I don't think that's going to happen. To Grant's question about 6-6, I don't think with this defense, I don't think Oklahoma can really, the schedule's tough. They figured out a way to win 6 games in 2024. That's a tough schedule. But I think that's the eject button. If the offense does not become to the point where it's really, really, really good consistently, you're like, what are we doing here? Come on.
They wouldn't have won 6 games in 2024 if they played 9 SEC games. They won 6 games because they had 4 non-conference games.
That's true. But here, I had this thought.
Final thoughts.
I was just say I had this thought. So let's say that I immediately realized it's a bad analogy just because 2024 was still the 4-team playoff, right? Or was the 12-team a thing back then?
It's the first year of the 12-team.
Okay. So Ole Miss didn't make the playoff.
Oh, yeah.
Ole Miss didn't make the playoff in 2024, right?
Correct.
Yeah. This would be quite the jump, but that year Ole Miss finished with the number 3 SP Plus defense. That would be par for the course. If you told me like, oh, you can have the number 3 SP Plus defense in the country, I'd be like, sign me up. That's great. That puts them in position that if they make a jump on offense, that they can be a great team. Ole Miss finished with the number 7 SP Plus offense in the nation in 2024. Now, that would be quite the jump, and I don't expect OU's offense to do that this year. But overall, the point is Ole Miss did not make the playoff that year because they happened to lose to, 3 other teams that were really good, unfortunately for them. What if OU goes...
They lost to Kentucky. They lost to a bad Kentucky team.
They got when OU was... Because I was at the Auburn game, and they were showing that game on the Jumbotron before the game started at Jordan-Hare. What if OU goes 9-3, and let's say that they lose a hard-fought game on the road to Georgia, they lose a hard-fought game to A&M, Ole Miss, whoever's like really good, and then they just get upset by Mississippi State. They go 9-3. That's below my standard of 10-2. They don't even make the playoff, more than likely. But they make these jumps. Let's say that they jump into the top 15 SP Plus on offense and they maintain their defense. It would be disappointing, but wouldn't that show you guys that, oh, he's actually figuring out how to run a program and build an entire roster, not just be a defensive coordinator?
Yes, that'd be fine with me. That would be fine for me. Sorry, I'm talking too fast. But then again, they could have waited for that before any sort of contract negotiations happen for a next contract. Like 9-3 this year is fine. That's what I predicted them to go as well. It's a tough schedule. It's just, and showing improvement offensively. Like that Ole Miss team was excellent. Top 10 SP Plus on both sides of the ball. But yeah, Lane Kiffin's a good coach. He's not the greatest coach. He's awesome at offense. And they lost to Kentucky and they lost at Florida that year. You can't lose those games, man. Like if you're going to win. So that's where you kind of hope for. Yeah.
That's Ole Miss.
It's Ole Miss. Yeah.
So we'll see. I guess, to answer your question, if they're 9-3 and they're like they're 15th on offensive SP Plus and 3rd, which means they'd probably be near the top 5 overall in SP Plus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be satisfied with that, but probably disappointed. It would have to.
But they should have won those games though. if their offense is that good.
Well, the point of that is just what I keep trying to hammer home. The reality is their schedules are just going to be harder. They're playing better teams every year. They're playing a bunch of better teams every single year. And sometimes
that's the goalposts that I'm scared of. Everyone being like, it's okay that we just went 8-4 because the SEC is really tough.
It's not a goal. It's not a goalpost. If in the 70s, if Barry Switzer had to play not just Nebraska, but if he also had to play Texas, well, I guess they did play Texas, but they weren't a conference opponent. And he fortunately had a good record against them in the 70s. But if they had to play Nebraska and USC and Ohio State every year in addition to Nebraska, it's like even great Barry Switzer teams might have dropped a game or two because you're just playing better players and better rosters and better coaches every single year. It's hard to do. And now you just have a playoff format where you can lose 2 games and it doesn't matter. You can be Miami and then play, like, get a fortuitous matchup in round 1 and then find yourself in the national title game. So it's not necessarily you're moving the goalposts. It's just the reality is you're playing really good teams. And as long as you just don't fall flat on your face, like we've seen really good OU teams do against teams they had no business losing to in the first place in the last 20 years. As long as that's not happening, I can stomach losing. Like it's not what you sign up for when you follow OU, but sometimes you just play a better team, and sometimes that better team makes a few more plays than you, and that's what happened against Ole Miss. That's what happened against Alabama. The Texas loss last year, very bad because Texas was not particularly good at that point in the year. And OU played uncharacteristically bad, according to how the rest of their season went. It was not very indicative of the defense. And even though that was John Mateer's first game after a surgery, the offense was able to perform better after that game. So there was more to be had, which is why that loss looked bad, because it was had less to do with Texas playing well and more to do with OU is just crap in the bed right now.
I guess I look at a program like Georgia, who's gone. I think they've had whatever since they won the national championship. They've had like 3 consecutive 11-1 seasons in the SEC, and I don't think they use. I think that's what they expect, and the fact that they're also playing a tough SEC schedule is irrelevant to them. They should go 11-1 or 12-0. That's their expectation. And I guess my feeling is that when can we expect OU to have those expectations? Because to me, that's what Oklahoma is. And that's what I mean by the expectations are changing right in front of our face, where, if Georgia can have these expectations, they play a tough SEC schedule too. Why can't OU have those expectations too? Maybe, and from, maybe from like a prudent standpoint, it's better for my mental health to lower expectations. But, that's not, OU is OU, man. Like they should feel like they're the top dog in the SEC because historically that is what they are.
Well, I mean, to that, I would just say, real quick, for that, I would just say, Kirby Smart and Georgia have proven it. If Brent Venables wins 10 games, they go to the playoff, and let's say they win a playoff game. At that point, Brent Venables would, to me, prove it, which is then when I start expecting more out of him. It's like, okay, like you've done it, you've built up this level, now I want more. Why can Georgia look at it that way? Again, because they've proven it. Brent has not proven it yet, but I expect them to this year. That's why 26 is huge.
All right, Brady, thank you for your time. What are you working on right now that you can send people to real quick?
Well, you can always go check out Sooners on SI, pumping out stories basically every day, and we are all excited for the start of the season as well. So I believe we'll have at least 2 availabilities with the team this week, hopefully Tuesday and Friday like we've done the previous 2 weeks. Don't know about a practice viewing. I've expected at least one more before they ramp up for game prep week next week for UTEP. So hopefully we get at least one more look at O-line versus D-line, getting a better idea of like who's snapping, who's at center, that kind of thing. So look forward to that. And of course, if you want to hear my craziness on podcast format, go to Through the Keyhole. So patreon.com/Through the Keyhole. Or we have the free pod as well. So just wherever you listen to podcasts, go check it out.
Beautiful. All right, that's it for today. Please like West of Everest on Facebook and follow West of Everest on Twitter, X, and Instagram. And you can follow the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And please leave a 5-star rating and review where it's applicable. We shall be back next week with our next episode. Until then, for Grant and Brady, I am Lee. This is West of Everest.